Welcome to the second, almost annual Emergency Aliyah Conference. I'm Josh Wander, and I'll be hosting you today. We have some great panels in front of us, and we have a lot of great literature as we come through the door. If you haven't seen, right on the left side over there, there's a table full of materials. There's also folders that you can take, and you should look through some great ideas. We have a tight schedule this evening, and we have a lot of people that want to make remarks. I should also mention that there are a lot of people that are online that are watching us from around the globe, and we're happy to see everyone here this evening. The opening marks are going to be given by Tzvi Fishman, who is the brainchild of this event here, and he's going to open up the evening. So Tzvi.
I'd like to start with a prayer that we say on Tuesdays and Thursdays after we read the Torah. The mic, you don't hear me? Mondays and Thursdays, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. And I'll say it in English. We usually say it in Hebrew. As for our brothers, the whole house of Israel, who are handed over to distress and captivity. We have in Israel brothers and sisters who have been handed over to distress and captivity in Gaza. And we also have brothers and sisters all over the world, in Las Vegas, in New York, in Florida, who are in a different type of bondage, a different type of captivity. They're hostages in a different way, but they are hostages all the same. And so we want to pray also for them. Our brothers on sea and on the land, may God have mercy on them and grant them relief, bringing them from darkness to light, meaning from the exile to the land of Israel, from servitude to liberty. A Jew cannot be a free man in a foreign land. That's how we started out the Seder on Pesach. This year we are slaves in the exile. Next year, free men in the land of Israel. From servitude to foreign nations, foreign governments, foreign languages, foreign identities, speedily and very soon, and let us say Amen. I think to maybe highlight and illustrate what I just said, I think everybody probably remembers the great demonstration in Washington a couple months ago after the outbreak of the war, a lot of support for Israel. And then in the middle, everybody, all of the Jews, the tens of thousands of Jews who were there, stopped, and they were called upon to sing one of the national anthems of America. America, America, God shed his light on thee. Or maybe it was a different one, but the end of the song was, America, my home, sweet home, America, America, my home, sweet home. Needless to say, America is not their home, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu is teaching them a lesson right now in a very powerful way. The anti-Semitism is not because of something that's going on here in Gaza. It's not because the Jews have big nose or that we like money. It's a stick that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is using to bring the Jewish people home to the land of Israel. The time has come to come home. Bezrat Hashem, the people here who for many, many years have worked grassroots movements to bring Jews to Israel. You have a very powerful mission, and you give the spirit to the whole Aliyah movement. And you reach millions of people, and I think that we have to be the commandos to invest any emergency Aliyah drive to bring the students from the Jewish campuses where they don't belong to the campuses of the Goyim where they don't belong to campuses here in Israel. I think we have to work with the Kodesh Baruch Hu to bring them here. And I think that, God willing, with the help of the governmental agencies, the Nefesh B'Nefesh, the Ministry of Aliyah V'Klita, we have the power and the means, Bezrat Hashem, to do it. I hope that the Rav Yosef Mendelevich will appear today. And once I told him, and I'm sort of afraid to say it with Yohanatan here, but once I told him, your imprisonment in Russia, in Siberia, was in many ways, or one way, a lot easier than mine in Hollywood and in New York, because at least you could see the bars. You knew you were in prison. I didn't know that I was in prison most of my life until I was 30. It's very difficult to bring Jews. They don't want to come. They have the good life. They really believe they're Americans. Nefesh B'Nefesh and all the other agencies do their best, but it's like, it's the toughest task of all. And it's made me think that maybe we should spend more time trying to bring the lost tribes. The Americans are even more lost. But there are millions of Jews around the world, or half Jews, or people with Jewish tradition that could come, and they make good citizens. They make great soldiers. They don't complain. You don't have to give them a villa. Among the different flyers in the literature that we passed out, there's some ideas for proposals, things that maybe we can initiate, thinking out of the box, thinking in new ways. That's what you people are here for. We want to hear from you, your ideas, your thoughts. And at the end of the evening, hopefully we'll sit together and we'll talk about these things and to formulate a plan that we can send to all the official government agencies. I just want to say that outside there's a photographer, and we would like everybody to go out during the conference and to express yourselves to the camera. We will also send the video clips to the governmental agencies to let them know how each of us feel, and also just to tell why you came to Israel in 2 minutes and what life has been for you in Israel. We'll make a little movie out of that with music, pictures of Israel, and we'll try to get it out around the world. So thank you very much for coming, and Baruch Hashem, Shekodesh Baruch Hu Yitein Lenu et Asiyata Deshmaya, to bring our people home and to rescue a Shekhinah from the Galut and the terrible, terrible, terrible Busha and Chilul Hashem that the Galut represents. Toda Rabba.
So just one correction, Tzvi. I think that Rabbi Mendelevich had one type of bars to deal with. You had other type of bars to deal with. Your bars were much harder than his bars.
I had other types of bars and things like that. Very good.
So the first thing I want to mention is that I just came back not so long ago from a trip to the United States, and things are not doing well, to say the least. Many people come here. I've been speaking since the war to many delegations from around the world that are coming here to visit, and they're telling people how courageous they are to come here to Israel at this time of war, that it's so dangerous, but they're very courageous in coming here, and I tell them that my definition of where it's safest for a Jew to be is where you can openly be Jewish. And here in the land of Israel, more than ever before, people are openly Jewish in the streets, while around the world, people are hiding the fact that they're wearing yarmulkes, they're hiding their Stars of David, they're hiding their tzitzit, they're hiding the mezuzahs. Thank you very much. I was about to present. One product that I picked up, this is not sponsored, but one product I picked up while I was in the States was this product over here. It's called the Camo Zuzah. The Camo Zuzah is a cover for your mezuzah. It has a little blinking red light. And the purpose of this is in order to hide the fact that you're Jewish, so you can put this over your mezuzah, the Camo Zuzah, and for some reason they think it's dangerous to be here in the land of Israel. Okay, each to their own. Tzvi, Rabbi Mendelovich is not in the house yet? Okay. And Rabbi Listman. So I'd like to welcome and call up Rabbi Listman from Achom Meir. He has a special program he'd like to tell us about with lone soldiers here in Israel. Rabbi Listman.
Thank you, Mr. Wonder. Good evening to everyone. Before I talk about a lone soldiers program, I'll tell you just briefly about myself. I was a lone soldier, meaning after I finished my undergraduate school and was debating should I or not go to law school or something else, I came to Israel, and after a 6-month program on a kibbutz, someone told me there's a place we can get answers to your questions about your own identity. And they said there's a place called Machon Meir, the Institute for Jewish Studies, the Center for Jewish Studies in Kiryat Moshe in Jerusalem. So 43 and 44 years ago, I was able, with the help of Machon Meir, to turn my life around. 3 of our sons are combat soldiers in Gaza that fought in top units. God blessed us with 9 children and many, many grandchildren. And it all stems from the grassroots education that I received in Machon Meir, which leads us to the following. Students coming from Columbia, from Florida, and other places, thank you. It's not really for small people like me, don't know what really Judaism is about. Students that want to really deepen their identity and understand something usually go to an institute and start learning Talmud, Halakha, Jewish law, and so on and so forth. But in Machon Meir, we first deepen our understanding who we are and where we come from. And I interviewed Avram Avinu just a few days ago, and I asked him, what was the first thing God told you about? Was it kosher food? Was it tefillin? Was it the laws of idolatry? He says, no. I asked Avram Avinu, what did God tell you? What? You're the forerunner of a nation of God? There's something called a nation of God that's so splendid, so special, so spectacular, so divine. And to where are they supposed to be convening and living? Not Borough Park? Rather, the land of Israel? So we believe the authentic Torah that was diluted, that was vague for 2,000 years in our galut, is now alive, not only alive and kicking, but right now is the foremost strength of the Jewish people. A Torah that reflects a nation, a Torah that reflects a state, a Torah that reflects our deep national identity. Young men from all over North America that are looking to discover themselves can find in Machon Meir a program amidst, not a Brooklyn bubble, but amidst an Israeli institution where they'll hear Hebrew, speak with Israelis, where they're going to learn a Torah that reflects a nation that's going through its renaissance, a nation that is alive, a nation that is inspiring the land, inspiring the population here in Israel. And therefore, I'm proud to say right now at this moment, we have lone soldiers that are serving in fighting units that right now are doing their basic training. And they come to Machon Meir for 6 months, for 1 year more. and they strengthen themselves, understand who they are and where we come from and to where are we going. And therefore, I believe that a place like Machon Meir is the ideal soft landing for anyone and everyone coming from North America and Europe that wants to strengthen their identity, deepen their understanding who they are, and our hands are open to embrace them and to hug them. Please come home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi Listman. I want to mention also that we're going to give an opportunity to all those people besides what Tzvi mentioned on the outside where we're taking these short clipped videos. We also want to give an opportunity to everyone to express their views. So after our different panels and after our different speakers, we're going to give the microphone out to the audience and they will be able to spend a few minutes asking questions or expressing their positions. Next, we're going to have a special panel. The panel is very apropos to what's going on, we know, today on the United States college campuses. The panel is entitled Crisis on College Campuses, and it is going to be moderated by Rabbi Yehuda Cohen. Cohen, right? Is that correct? Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Cohen is a regular lecturer at Machon Meir. He is the editor of Vision magazine, and he is the educational director of the Vision movement. We're going to ask him to introduce his different panelists.
Testing, testing. Okay, great. How's everybody doing? All right, everyone here's made Aliyah already, or didn't have to? All right. I just came back from the States before Purim, and I saw a lot of signs that, among the Jews at least, in New York and in Florida, that there are a lot of ideas that some of the people in this room have been talking about for a long time, not only years, but really decades. And those ideas weren't always very well received among the Jewish community in the United States. But I think today they really are. I think a lot of the ideas that we've been talking about for a long time here are now becoming much more obvious, not just acceptable, but obvious to a lot of American Jews. The problem is we're not in a position to lead. We haven't positioned ourselves to be able to really influence where people go from those realizations. And that's also true for Israeli society. Like, we see that there are certain realizations that have become obvious to people in Israeli society. Like, one thing that I think should be very clearly obvious is that this two-state solution idea doesn't work. I think that's become common knowledge here now. The problem is we have a very powerful media that's able to drive people to other conclusions based on those healthy impulses. So last time this conference was organized and the organizers were gracious enough to let me speak for a few minutes, the message that I put forward was basically that Aliyah, you can't increase Aliyah by telling people to make Aliyah, or showing yeshiva students in Brooklyn or Monsey the sources and we have lots of sources, but showing them the sources where they have an obligation, a Torah obligation to make Aliyah, that usually doesn't increase Aliyah. And even offering them, a more generous or attractive sal klita, like an absorption basket, when they make Aliyah, doesn't often increase Aliyah. Meaning these aren't the things that increase Aliyah in my experience. In my experience, what increases Aliyah really is bringing diaspora Jews to see themselves as characters in the story of Israel, psychologically. Meaning the movie they're living in can't be the American dream, or the Jewish corner of the American dream, but rather the story of the children of Israel coming back to life in the modern age after 2,000 years of exile. That's a great story. And if we can help the next generation of Jews in the diaspora to really see themselves as participants in that story, as characters in that story, then Aliyah becomes a no-brainer. Aliyah becomes obvious. And they don't need to be coerced into it. They don't need to be bribed into it. And to be honest, I've known a few people who have come here, made Aliyah, took the free degree, and then went back to wherever they made Aliyah from. Meaning that the gifts, the absorption basket, the sources, that's not what really creates Aliyah. What creates Aliyah is bringing more Jews to see themselves as active participants, to want to be part of this story, right? To want to be a part of this story. And I am sorry to say that it would be one thing if we just failed to share that story, if the institutions responsible for educating our youth in the diaspora merely failed to help them see themselves as characters in that story. That would be one thing, and that would be bad, but it's worse. I would argue that many of the institutions responsible for keeping young Jews engaged Jewishly and connected to Israel have actually pushed many of our best and brightest young people away. I think that if you look at these protests, I don't think Josh remembers, but this morning I asked him if he could change the title from the crisis on campuses to the crisis of the next generation, because I think when we only look at what's happening on campuses, we're really only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I think what's happening on campuses is the result of something far, far deeper that we need to address. I know young Jews, not one, not two, whose parents spent a fortune on at least 12 years of pro-Israel, modern Orthodox private school, in New York, and they're at the protest tents at Columbia. Right? And it's not uncommon. I'd say that, I went, when I was in the States, I was in the Five Towns for a day. And I went with a friend of mine who lives there to a pizza shop where kids after school were hanging out, Five Towns kids, Jewish kids, they go to Jewish schools. And I told my friend, let me show you something. And I asked the students next to us, the teenagers, they were like, juniors, seniors. I asked them, what's the mission of the Jewish people? Do the Jewish people have a mission in history? And they had no clue what I was talking about. If I asked them how to make tea on Shabbat, they might have known. If I asked them what bracha they made on the pizza, they might have different answers for me. But I asked, what's the mission of the Jewish people? Is there a purpose to history? Do the Jewish people have a unique function in history? And they had no idea what I was talking about. Meaning that's completely absent from Jewish education in the diaspora. And maybe some institutions here as well. What is the mission of the Jewish people? What are we here for? What is this for? Why are we doing this? And I would say something else, in addition to being completely uninspiring, the Jewish educational institutions that exist are essentially trying their mission, what they tell the parents who pay the tuition, and what they work to achieve educationally with the students is to create successful Americans who will have Shabbat once a week in a kosher restaurant to eat in, and a pair of tefillin in the morning. That is the goal. Not to be part of the Jewish people rebuilt in our land, not to participate in achieving the goals of Jewish history, which are accessible to us for the first time in thousands of years, but rather to be successful Americans with a Jewish religion. And the organizations, there were two organizations from what we can call the Hasbara industry, the pro-Israel organizations responsible for spreading pro-Israel messages on university campuses. There were two organizations that were actually supposed to be here. And they pulled out. They pulled out of this conference. And maybe it's a good thing they did, because I feel more comfortable now calling them out and saying that they failed. In the last 2-3 decades, American university students, especially politically active students, have become increasingly aware and critical of US imperialism, of the way the United States behaves around the world. Now, at the same time as this awareness is spreading among the next generation of Americans, the pro-Israel organizations have worked to present Israel as an outpost of American power. Meaning these two things are happening at once. Politically active college students are becoming more aware and more critical of US imperialism, right? It's a given, meaning you go to American campuses today, you have a political conversation with a student, with a professor. The way the US functions overseas is known to be nefarious. It's known to be exploitative. It's known to be evil. And at the same time, all of the organizations responsible for promoting Israel on campuses, making people pro-Israel, are presenting Israel as part of that, as an appendage to that, as an outpost of Western power in an otherwise savage region. That's the messaging. Right? And question might be, we could ask why. I think that one of the reasons might be that the donors to a lot of these organizations, they themselves don't want to struggle with questions of dual loyalty. It's very important that they can feel American and pro-Israel and American and pro-Israel and American and pro-Israel and not have to choose. So the organizations obviously don't want to rock the boat by even spotlighting examples where Israel is actually a victim of US empire. I mean, the disengagement from Gaza comes to mind, but even the Biden administration's behavior right now is telling. That's one thing. Another thing is that until this whole campus thing even got on the radars of most of the decision makers here, the real interest Israel had in the United States was to get weapons, to go to Capitol Hill and get weapons, right? Go to Congress, go to the Senate, and lobby for weapons, for arms. So when the Hasbara on campus began around 20-something years ago, they basically came with the same message. We're going to basically say what we say on Capitol Hill to university students. Yeah. And that led to the complete alienation of all politically active college students from wanting anything to do with Israel. Israel is the bad guy. Israel is the villain, right? And when we look at what's happened, we've essentially, we've been fighting against the wrong thing. When we look at what's going on in university campuses, we're saying, well, the problem is where the next generation has gone politically, right? They've become anti-Israel, they've become anti-America, and we need to fix them, we need to change them, we need to stop this. But the truth is, maybe we're attacking the wrong thing. Maybe where American college students is bigadol actually very good and healthy and correct. The problem is how they see Israel, how we've presented Israel to them as an agent of US empire instead of as its victim. Now, given all these challenges, right, and the state of the next generation of diaspora Jews, I'd like to invite my distinguished panelists, starting with Geula Oz. Geula is a social media activist, for those of you who are not on Instagram or TikTok and aren't familiar with Geula's work, but she is a powerful young voice in the Jewish world. And I'm going to introduce each panelist as they speak, starting with Geula, the situation of Jewish identity and how it plays in to what we're talking about.
Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Geula. Thank you all for coming. I want to speak specifically about how religious Jews in the diaspora can kind of, I guess, ignore this huge part of Jewish identity that is Yishuv Baaretz, that is living in Eretz Yisrael, that is our connection to Israel, because I think it's a huge issue, not even just in the modern Orthodox world, but even, super Hasidish, yeshivish, like very, very, very religious Jews are able to ignore this core tenet of our identity. And I think that the fact that Passover just ended, I think it's relevant to talk about how most of the Jews did not leave Mitzrayim, right? We learned that about 4/5 of the Jews died in Egypt during the Plague of Darkness. And then you have the generation that was in the Midbar, and they all died off, and only their children were able to enter the land of Israel. And I guess the question that I have is, what was different about these Jews? We know about the Jews who left Israel that they were also on the 49th level of impurity. Like, they were not the best. And my prediction is that these Jews who stayed behind distanced themselves with the national identity and the national mission of the Jewish people. That they said, I am a Jew individually, and that affects me as an individual, which I think is a very religious take on Judaism. And my connection with the Am isn't the main point of my identity. And so they stayed back, and they died in Egypt, or they died in the Midbar. And I unfortunately believe that even in the religious community, which I feel blessed to be a part of, maybe religious isn't the right word, Torah observant, because I don't like categorizing Judaism as a religion, because I think that allows us to fall into this mistake. I think that there is an identity crisis as a result of 2,000 years of trauma in the diaspora, that we have made ourselves into a religion, and that's not who we are. The Torah we never describe ourselves in the entire Tanakh as a religion. Arguably, the only person who describes us as a religion is Haman, and he sucks, so why would we listen to him? We identify ourselves as either B'nai or Am, that we are the children of, that we're a family unit, or Am, we're a nation. And when we confuse ourselves with a religion, we get into this, I guess, this falsehood of Judaism becomes a way for me to get a sort of heaven, and it's very personal, and it completely ignores the collective, and especially the collective mission. Like Rav Yehuda Cohen was saying, we have a mission as a Jewish people. And when we ignore who we are, when we're struggling through this identity crisis, it's so easy to say, well, Egypt has Target and Trader Joe's, and Egypt has bigger houses, so why would I leave Egypt for this strange land? And oh, we're in the Midbar, we get man every day, and it's so comfortable, and like our clothes grow with us, and we don't have to go to the bathroom. Why would I want to go into this strange land with these giants who are all dying? Like, what's going on? It's so easy when we forget who we are, that who we are is tied to a mission. It's so easy to be like, it's so comfortable. And what do we know about comfort in the Torah? Who's named Comfort? Noah, who was a tzaddik in his generation, but wasn't able to bring people with him. He ignored the needs of the collective. That's what comfort does. So I think there are many reasons, aside from that Torah Jews don't move. Obviously, I believe that there are individual reasons for a Jew to stay in Chutz La'aretz, mainly to bring other Jews to Eretz Yisrael, to take care of a Geula until they can move to Israel. And I think that it's easy to say that, oh, well, this person has an excuse, so why doesn't the collective have an excuse? And I think that also when we forget our identity as a nation, we forget the way that history repeats itself. I am watching the news every day, and I'm calling my family back home in America, and I'm saying, like, hello, wake up, this has happened before. And we look back on those times where this has happened before and say, why didn't they leave Germany? Why didn't they leave Poland? Why did they stay? There were people offering them a way to get to the mandate. My great-grandfather, Yehuda Arazi being one of them, who was smuggling Jews into the mandate. There were ways to get out. Why didn't they leave? It's because they were comfortable. And when you associate yourself with a religion, why would this national story have anything to do with you? Why would the fact that history repeats itself have any bearing on you? So, and I think another thing is that in a lot of collections of the 613 mitzvot, Yeshiva Aretz is not listed. But neither is belief in Hashem or studying Torah. This is a Heksher mitzvah. This is why so many mitzvot cannot be done outside of the land of Israel. Just like no mitzvah can be complete without believing that Hashem exists. Obviously, we're supposed to live in Israel. And yes, there was an excuse. We were exiled. So of course we weren't here for a while because we had no means to come back. But now we can come back. And I think it's almost insulting to our forefathers that we don't. Thank you. I want to end with a mashal that one of my rabbis I went to Neve Yerushalayim, which is a seminary here in Jerusalem. One of my rabbis there, Rabbi Marcus, who is by no means like a very Zionistic rabbi, but I think this is such an important mashal, is he said that when we were sent into exile, it was as if we were a child misbehaving at the kitchen table who was told by his father, go to your room. The point of being sent to your room is not to stay in your room. Yeah, you might have some fun games there or a nice book. You might have a poster you like to look at. But the point of being sent to your room is not to be in your room. It is to learn from your mistakes, go back to the kitchen table, and have a relationship with your father. So for anyone watching who has not yet made Aliyah, who is not in the process of making Aliyah, go back to the kitchen table and have a relationship with your father and the rest of your family. That's Hashem, obviously our father, and the rest of our family, the Jewish people.
Thank you, Hila. That's such an important component to this. What is wrong with Jewish identity in the diaspora? And Rav Tzvi alluded to this earlier when he spoke about that big rally, according to the American Jews, who was really considered in the tent at this moment that the Jewish people were under attack are those who came to Washington. There were people who were Eretz Yisrael Shlema people, there were people with kippot, people without kippot, there were two-staters, there were even J-studers there. But if you wanted to be considered in the tent, you came to that March on Washington. And as Rav Tzvi said, the March on Washington featured not only American flags, but even the American anthem. It's a question of identity. It's confusion over identity. And with that, I'd like to introduce Aryeh Shapiro. Aryeh Shapiro is an avrech at Machon Meir and an organizer with the Vision Movement, a frequent writer at Vision Magazine. He finished his undergrad at Georgetown University, a very politically involved campus, and is now living just between Yerushalayim and Beit El. I don't know if he wants us to give out exactly where he lives.
So I think when we focus on what's going on campuses today, and are Jewish students safe on campuses today, is that the college campus of today is not a microcosm of America today. It's a microcosm of America 20 years from now. What's happening on American campuses today will be the political reality of the whole country down the road. And I think in order to understand that reality, we really need to break what's going on these campuses into two groups. We can call them the establishment and the activists. The administration and the politically active radicals that are in these tents, that are occupying these buildings, that are actively making Jewish students feel unsafe. I think, first and foremost, we need to understand the establishment, where the campuses are today, which is really closer to a microcosm of where the whole country is today, especially the political establishment. Obviously, Yonatan and Ariel here can talk much more deeply and extensively about the political reality in American halls of power today. But I think it's really important to, bekitzer, break down the US interests in the region and understand where Jews on these campuses and in these halls of power are active and find a place. We see from left to right, Chuck Schumer, Jared Kushner, Thomas Nides, leading much of American policy in the Middle East, dictating how the American government sees and acts towards Israel. And obviously the center of that relationship is the special relationship, the indivisible bond, the unique connection between the two greatest democracies in the history of Earth, the United States of America and the 51st state, Medinat Yisrael. And this reality, like Rav Yehuda mentioned, is the centerpiece of the Hasbara industry, Jewish education in Jewish day schools, and in Jewish studies programs across college campuses. And Jews who live in America and strive to be politically active, to get internships, to get jobs on Capitol Hill, or even on Wall Street, are encouraged to deepen and strengthen this indivisible bond because it's best for America and for Israel. But we need to unpack that a little bit. There's much to say about why Israeli interests and American interests don't always align. But I want to focus on 2 points that are ultimately related. The first is our dependence on American weapons. Like Rav Yehuda said, the American establishment, AIPAC, and even college campus activists in the Hasbara scene are so dedicated to making Israel receive continued funding. Even Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated in his own biography that while he made a point of decoupling the Israeli economy from American financial aid and civil aid, he didn't see it as necessary to decouple us from military aid. And I think that's the struggle that we're really seeing right now as we're at war in Gaza, as we're looking towards a war in the north. More and more our dependence on American military aid is hindering our freedom and our ability to do what we need to do to keep ourselves safe And not just to keep ourselves safe, but to be who we need to be as leaders, militarily and economically and politically and morally in this region. And part of that, obviously, is America's insistence on the two-state solution. Much of that goes to the deep, even subconscious nature, Christian nature of American identity. Because for a nation that even when it's secular, defines itself as secular, atheist, not Christian, defines itself through Christianity, it is impossible for such a nation to accept Jews returning to all of the parts of our homeland, because that undermines their deepest held belief that Christianity, that their religion, that their God has replaced us. When Am Yisrael returns to be who it needs to be in all of Eretz Yisrael, that means all of 2,000 years of Christian history is a lie. And American identity, subconscious, if not conscious, cannot accept that, and therefore must insist on dividing our land. And that brings us really to the second side of the scale on American campuses, and what will be a continuingly and increasingly dominant force in American politics as well. There are growing movements against American empire, and by extension, against Israeli sovereignty and Israeli military action and Israeli existence as a whole, because we see ourselves and present ourselves on a campus level and also on a national level as an extension of American power in the Middle East. These activists want the US out of the Middle East. They want American interests out of foreign regions that they have no business messing with and killing and robbing resources. And honestly, I want the same thing. I also want American interests and American money and American arms and American troops out of the Middle East. But until we, as a nation, can accept that, can make that shift, we're always going to find ourselves at loggerheads in conflict with these campus activists who are going to be the leaders of the free world in 2 years, according to Rav Tzvi's timeline, or in a more conservative estimate, 10 to 15. Our response can't just be to continue hanging on these same Hasbara talking points that have failed our Jewish students, our Jewish brothers in America for the last decades. We need to be deepening and challenging what it really means to be Jewish in America, and obviously as a nation here in Medinat Yisrael. So I think really the most important thing is to get Jewish students in high school and in college engaged in Torah Eretz Yisrael, learning what it means to be a nation, what it means to be Am Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, Rav Tzvi and Rav Lissman have been doing incredible work translating so much of our Torah into English for American audiences. But we need to be doing so much more. We need to be bringing more students. We need to be sharing these ideas with all of the students, our families, our friends on American campuses and in American high schools. Because if we don't make that shift, we're losing the war.
We're going to take a short commercial break and give you, is there somebody here from Nefesh B'Nefesh who'd like to come up and take the microphone? Naftali.
I'd like to invite Naftali, everyone to come up and speak on behalf of Nefesh B'Nefesh. We're sorry for this interlude, but he has to leave, so we wanted to hear from an official source, representative of Nefesh B'Nefesh, please.
This conference and with this Kahal Kadosh. It was exciting to me to see the room slowly fill up as someone who made Aliyah as a child. My parents made Aliyah with me and my older brother from Los Angeles 40 years ago. And it's exciting as someone who, since I was a teenager, I've been active in different Aliyah initiatives, to see that I'm not the only one who's still plugging, who is still singing this song. And here there are a whole bunch of people in the room and online, harmonizing along with me and with the organization that I represent, Nefesh B'Nefesh, encouraging Jews to make Aliyah. For those of you who are not familiar, Nefesh B'Nefesh has been around for 20 years now, just over 20 years. Initially, we were I guess we could call it a boutique Aliyah organization, intended to support, additionally on top of what the government and the Jewish Agency offered, support Aliyah from North America. And from 2008, Nefesh B'Nefesh was appointed by the State of Israel to be the Zera Bitzuit, to be the extension as a non-profit organization, but the operational extended hand extension of Aliyah from North America. And in this time, over 2 decades, we've helped over 80,000 Olim arrive from the United States and Canada. And I think that one of the very proud achievements that we can boast as an organization and as a society in Israel is that the retention rate of those Olim is officially by the government checked at 90%. When I made Aliyah in the early 80s, I think the statistic was that between 40 to 50% of Olim from the United States returned within a few years to the United States. So it's something that we can all be proud of, that our communities have learned to embrace Olim, and that life in Israel has improved, quality of life has improved, and opportunities have opened up that allow Olim, not only from North America, but that's what I'm here to speak about, to stay in Israel, not just to arrive in Israel, but to stay in Israel as well. It is daunting to stand before, and I've been on many events in the United States. You and I, Yehuda, may have been on the same flight. I also came back right before Purim. So I've been to many events in the United States and spoken and met many potential Olim. And it's daunting to try to represent Aliyah, something I believe in passionately, and that our organization believes in passionately, and to answer sometimes questions. I was once in Lakewood, and someone, has anyone here been to Lakewood? Have you seen Lakewood? What Lakewood has to offer? I'm Dafka taking an example from Lakewood. And so, I was paid to go. And someone asked me in Lakewood, I have a house that looks like this, and I have land, and where can I have that in Israel? I said, I don't know. There are places you can have that. I'm not sure you're going to choose to live there, moving from Lakewood. But the question is, what your priorities are, and if you truly want to move to Israel, what are you going to choose? He accepted my answer. I'm not sure he's going to be our next Oleh on an Aliyah flight. He might be, but he accepted my answer. And that's what's daunting, standing before Americans who want to make Aliyah. We do have a lot to offer. We as in Israel, the state of Israel. And in addition to that, Nefesh B'Nefesh. In terms of encouraging Aliyah and promoting Aliyah, we invest tremendous efforts and extensive resources always in encouraging Aliyah. Different campaigns have been launched and run over the years. Some of them have been successful, some of them have not. We're currently in the midst of different campaigns in promoting Aliyah from North America. And in addition, since the panel that I was, I'm sorry I interrupted, but since this panel is about campuses and crisis on campus, we are also always involved at all levels in the most burning, urgent questions regarding Aliyah. And right now we're also in conversation with different government agencies, government offices, regarding solving the problem of transferring credits and back and forth from one university to Israeli universities and what can be done. So we have at Nefesh B'Nefesh mechanisms that work inward and outward, meaning we work outward, marketing, campaigning, promoting Aliyah with all of its difficulty. And also we have divisions and employees, staff who are constantly trying to address the issues here how can we resolve them in order to allow more people to make the choice to live here more easily, and ease their landing so that it doesn't feel like that person in Lakewood is giving up so much, so that it doesn't feel like there's so much being left behind. It's as I said, it's wonderful to see so many people gather together to say there's an emergency and we need to think of solutions and what can we do. And I unfortunately can't stick around for the whole evening, but Tzvi promised me that any questions that come up for us will be sent our way, and we're happy to also put our weight behind any ideas that can be implemented in order to make things make things move forward. So. Your name, please, madam? Your name, please? If I can know who asked the question. Nice to meet you. Nefesh B'Nefesh is an independent organization. We have funding from the State of Israel and from private donors. Evangelistic money that comes into Nefesh B'Nefesh is a fraction of 1%, and it was approved by Gedolei Hador with Nefesh B'Nefesh, with Rabbi Fass. It's a fact that I'm not going to dispute with you.
Mina, it's not question time. We're going to save it to the end. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm not going to dispute it. It's a fact that I don't need to prove myself here. So, as I said, any questions that you have, unfortunately, I can't stick around for the rest and for the questions later. But I'll be happy to receive the questions and then send the answers in.
As the moderator of this conference, I'm going to use a moderator's executive privilege, and I'm going to ask one question.
Go for it.
Nefesh B'Nefesh does an amazing job. You've expressed that they've had successful campaigns in the past and brought 80,000 Jews to Israel.
80,000?
80,000. If my numbers are correct, which my math wasn't always my subject, but let's say about 2% of American Jewry. What would you consider to be a success rate? How many Jews are you willing, even according to the Geula mentioned 20% they made it out of Egypt, 2% is far away from that 20%. I think that it's a drop in the bucket of what we need to bring back to Israel. What would you consider to be a success rate in Nefesh B'Nefesh terms?
I can do better.
What?
You can't do better than Moshe, 20%.
I don't know that I can put a success into numbers and into percentages. What I can say, though, is, in my opinion, is that a success is two things. A, that the people who come stay, which I mentioned before. I think that's crucial. Above the number of people who make Aliyah, get off the plane, I think it's crucial that the people who come stay. And that I know that we as an organization, and there are other organizations and also my colleagues here from Misrad HaKlita, who pour yamim kalelot of efforts and resources into making sure that Olim can make it here. So that's a very important measure of success in my eyes. And I think of our organization as well. And our post-Aliyah efforts are heavily funded, but not by the government. So everything that we put into retaining Olim in Israel is of our own effort. The other thing is the ability to assist those who want to come. And that's another important measure of success. Being able to follow trends and interest, and I didn't get to mention, but I think anecdotally you all know that there's a tremendous rise in interest in Aliyah. So it's backed by statistics and numbers as well. The last quarter of since the war, basically, since October, we're in a rise of about 80% compared to previous years of interest in Aliyah. So our efforts are focused on turning that interest into actual Olim who arrive, and to making sure that our system is set up in order to facilitate and assist those Olim, along with our partners in Misrad HaKlita and the Jewish Agency. So those are efforts, and I can tell you we work very, very closely, those three entities, Nefesh B'Nefesh, Misrad HaKlita, and the Jewish Agency. And I think that other than talking about how many, it's about what we can do for those who actually are interested and those who arrive.
I hope that you get some information and some ideas from this group, because I think I can speak on behalf of many people that are here that were solely disappointed with the efforts that have been made until now by not only Nefesh B'Nefesh, but the Jewish Agency and other organizations. This is not meant to put you on the hot seat, okay. But we believe that, and it's called an emergency conference because we believe it is an emergency, and that this window of opportunity is closing, and we need to get the Jews here as quickly. But I believe personally that the government of Israel is very, very perhaps not aware, and definitely not willing or able to facilitate the waves of mass aliyah that we're about to come up with, that are about to confront us. And I hope that you have a plan for that, because it's happening, and it's going to happen quicker than we think.
Thank you for bringing up that concern. And definitely, again, I can't stick around to hear everything, but please send us the ideas, and we're very much open to consider them and push them forward as much as we can.
Okay, we now resume our regularly scheduled program. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but I just want to say, in addition to what Aryeh had so eloquently pointed out, the fact that
presenting Israel on campuses as the Robin to America's Batman in the Middle East, as an appendage of American power, has only made us not only the bad guy on college campuses throughout North America, but the low-hanging bad guy, right? From the perspective of the average college student who wants to make the world a better place, U.S. empire is a big antagonist to fight. Israel looks easier, right? Israel looks like it's within reach. We can destroy it, chas v'shalom. There's as I mentioned before, I'm not going to say a lot, but there is a sizable proportion of anti-Israel protesters on these campuses right now who went through 12 years of very expensive pro-Israel modern Orthodox education. I would say that the Jewish educational system in North America is losing our best and brightest. And to elaborate more on that, I'd like to invite Shai Reif to speak. Shai was a student organizer with the Vision Movement at York University, which is one of the most problematic campuses when it comes to Israel-type stuff, really right up there with places like Columbia and Berkeley. And not only was Shai successful in, first of all, Shai made Aliyah after graduating from York, that's important, but not only was Shai successful at spreading real deep messages of Jewish identity, Shai was successful at reaching out to the students who are considered unreachable to the Hasbara industry, those who actually want to make the world a better place and see the state of Israel as an obstacle to that. In fact, I could attest to this because when Shai was a student on campus, he organized for me to speak on campus to a group called SAYA, the Students Against Israel Apartheid. That was the organization that brought me to speak because of Shai's diplomatic work on campus. So he's good at this, and I want to give him the floor.
Okay, I'm going to try not to be too long because I understand we're a little pressed for time. Okay. So when I went to York University, we saw the warning signs. What we're seeing today at Columbia and all these different universities didn't start 6 months ago, didn't start this week, but was actually something that we were trying to tell the world about for years already. What I found at York, though, is that the responsibility for Israel's poor image lies at our feet, and that the story that we were telling. The story that we were telling was one that was being scoffed at, and one that was very was honestly embarrassing, and that's led to this discourse of an "I was not told" discourse. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Jews now who are saying, "I was not told about this and that. I was not told about this policy against Palestinians." Whatever sort of things that you hear.
You never told me.
You never told me, right? You never told me. Whether it be about policies directed at non-Jewish populations, or whether it be about the founding of Israel itself. And even though it's threatening on the surface, I actually think that when we take a deeper look at it, it's something that's actually really true and is emblematic of the failure of Jewish education. Because when I came to yeshiva here, I can safely say that I also was not told. I was told that we were a religion, that our identity was a religion, and that we could be good Americans. I'm Canadian, but we could be good Canadians, and that our values were fluid, and whatever our host society was, we can adapt to those values because we were this religion called Judaism. And when we take those principles, especially in North America, and we bring it to college campuses, it often we often sound very shallow. We'll say things like, we should exist because we're this bastion of Western civilization in the Middle East, right? Or that we invented cherry tomatoes. And these reasons, actually, not only are they ineffective in convincing any of tomorrow's political leaders, or in 2 years political leaders, but they also, not only do they legitimize the core charges against us, but they also turn off our best and brightest Jews. And so in order to strip away these layers of what we call in the Vision Movement colonization, the colonization of Jewish identity, and to actualize our identity, I actually think that would be something that would help us reach Jews who are being turned off by our messaging, and help us actualize our our identity in a way that's more in line with our prophets and sages and our history. To recognize that Western values and the Western identity isn't inherently our own. I think we'll create a generation of stronger Jews and radically change the dynamics on campus. It is a scary prospect because it will involve confronting our past and acknowledging some of the mistakes that we've made. And it will also, we can actually celebrate our heroes for who they were and not just whitewashed versions of them. I'm just going to conclude with a story that was actually very emblematic of my time on campus. When I was passing a table where there was a conversation between a Hasbara activist who was tabling for her organization and a Palestinian who came to antagonize her. And they were arguing on every detail. She was talking about USBs and he was talking about settler colonialism, and they were talking totally different languages right past each other. And when I showed up and I spoke to the Palestinian and I laid down the Jewish story, a strong story, a story of the Maccabim, a story of Rabbi Akiva, and a story that he could relate to actually. And the comment I got from the Hasbara table was, "You sound like Meir Kahana." This was meant to be an insult, by the way. You sound like Meir Kahana. For the Hasbara table, I was too Jewish. Rav Meir Kahana, of course. But to the Palestinian, we were on the same page, right? And so I think by being confident in our story and learning our true story, I think we'll actually be able to change the dynamics on campus and to avoid losing Jews to anti-Israel movements.
For those who don't know, one of the hashtags, one of the slogans of the Jewish left, the anti-Israel Jewish left in America right now is "You never told me," right? Like meaning I went to Hebrew school, I went to Jewish day school, you never told me about the Nakba, you never told me about the apartheid, you never told me about settler colonialism. And the truth is they were never told about our real story. Meaning when you look at the Hasbara industry, when you look at Jewish diaspora education, the Israel education they're given is the Israel of the people in this country who are afraid when we win elections. Meaning they're getting basically, if you look at whether it's, I don't want to name organizations, but any of the Coca-Cola pro-Israel organizations, the mainstream pro-Israel organizations, they are presenting what we can call Yair Lapid Israel, or Meretz Israel. That is the message being brought to campus. That's the Israel being presented on campus. And the truth is, when a student gets to college and he confronts for the first time another message, another story, the story of people who felt victimized by us, that is a much more powerful than Meretz Israel. And the tragedy is all of the Hasbara organizations are so afraid to present our real story, but our real story is actually the deep, powerful story that could successfully compete with the other stories out there. Now, last but not least, we have Yirin Weltzman. Yirin is an entrepreneur and activist online. Through her unique media platform, Women Transcend, Yirin inspires women across the world to become more connected to their feminine strength, to their Jewish identities, and to the soul of this land. Yirin, the microphone's yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I grew up in South Africa, and my family is actually 6 generations Yerushalmi. In 1948, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, she smuggled the shofar into the Kotel in Yom Kippur, the last time that the shofar was blown, until 1967. And that story never inspired me because I actually didn't grow up on that story. I didn't grow up knowing my family's deep heritage and history and commitment and legacy that they had lived for and died for, coming from Germany, coming from other parts of the world, and eventually coming to Eretz Israel and building the Batei Machaseh in the Ir Atika. And I think that they knew their role in the Jewish story. And a big problem that we're experiencing right now, Jews all over the world, especially someone who grew up in a very secular Zionist day school in South Africa, we don't know what that story is, let alone what role we can play within that story. And I think that part of this new generation, since the 8th of October, everything, it's almost like a veil has been lifted over the reality, and everything is coming out. And people, if up until now they didn't know what it meant to be a Jew, if they didn't know what it meant to be a Torah Jew, if their identity was in question, now we've just added an extra layer to that equation, and that layer is Israel. What does Israel have to do with me? What is this country? All of a sudden I'm defending something that up until now I may not even have felt part of, I've maybe never even visited. So now all of a sudden the Jewish equation of identity has become that much more complex, and up until now we haven't given students the education, the information, all the experiences to really internalize that and live it on an experiential level. And I think that even though today there's so much information all over the world on social media, there's everyone out there giving messages and really trying to educate a new future online, but the problem is our schooling. Our problem is when a child goes into a Jewish day school and leaves 12 years later not knowing the full Chumash, not knowing the importance of the land of Israel, not knowing what it even means to be a Jew connected to God, to speak to God. That is when Aliyah is obviously not going to be an answer, because there isn't that bridge that is connecting them from day one to that eventual promised land and to that future. So I think that today when we're looking at young people all over the world, what are they looking for? What are they yearning for? Everyone is thirsty for spirituality. Everyone is thirsty for purpose, for identity. They're thirsty for Torah. They don't know it yet because they don't know that the Torah can actually provide that spiritual escape, that spiritual connection and escape. They don't know that we're living in a religion that is embodied, that is deep, that is meditative, that is spiritual, that is beautiful. And I think that a big part of the missing equation is, yes, we do need to be speaking about Torat Eretz Israel, but first, I think that the first thing that people want is Torat HaNefesh. People want to be connected to themselves, and they don't want to look for New Age spirituality. They don't want to look in the East. They don't want to look at all these other religions and paths. They need to have a abode in their own home that allows them to connect to their deepest yearnings from a Torah perspective. But unfortunately, the Jewish education system right now all over the world, and secular day schools especially, does not provide that. Another thing, community. The biggest pandemic in the world right now is loneliness. People are lonely. Mental health is on the rise. How can we even leverage Jewish community as an anecdote, as a medicine to that problem? We need to be looking at the current issues that are happening all over the world, and how can our Jewish values and Jewish community be a solution to that? And I think that looking forward into the future, it's not just about changing this narrative of victimhood, because no one wants to be part of this victim community of, oh, we're the Jews, they tried to kill us, we survived, now we have our land, we're apologetic for it, but at least we have a safe space to be. This victimhood narrative needs to change into one that is a story with a vision, a story with a future. I want Jewish warriors to be walking around campuses, to be walking around schools, people that see and understand the vision and the story for the Jewish people, and I think that that's what we need to educate for and to from a young age, and we need a lot of resources, we need vision, we need leaders, and B'ezrat Hashem, we'll get there. So.
So in conclusion, we need a revolution in Jewish education. We need to focus on bringing Jews up to see themselves as active participants in their own people's story. The goal of life should not be to be a successful American or Canadian or South African or French person or British person with the Jewish religion, but rather a participant in rebuilding Hebrew civilization after 2,000 years of Galut. Thank you for having us.
Thank you to Rabbi Cohen and all the panelists. I encourage everyone, we're going to take a short break for about 10-15 minutes now. I encourage everybody to, go out and to the videographer outside and do a short clip with your ideas, with your comments about Aliyah. And also we have a nice, beautiful spread here of food that has been generously donated by Paul Pinchas Azuz. And we have holy bagel in the back. And of course, all bagels here in Eretz Yisrael are holy, but these are especially holy. And we have coffee and cakes over to your left, so please feel free. And we'll reconvene in about 10-15 minutes. Our next speaker truly requires no introduction. Besides being a good friend, he's someone that is known far and wide. But I'm not sure that people know him for his passion for Aliyah. They know about his personal story somewhat, but they don't know about how troubled he is, as many of us, that we cannot sleep at night thinking about our brethren that are abroad in danger. And like I mentioned with Tzvi in the beginning, sometimes the bars that are in Las Vegas and New York and Florida are harder to get out of than the bars of a prison. With that, I would like to call up Jonathan Pollard.
Shalom Chaverim. A few weeks before Pesach this year, I was asked to undertake a very special mission. It was one that was unanticipated and actually involved quite a bit of personal danger, which is why I took my wife and 4 daughters with me, because I figured no matter what danger I was going to be in, the presence of 4 Israeli daughters and 1 British woman would definitely protect me. The French community I'm very close to. I've lived in France. I've worked in France. And I know the community well enough to understand what their problems are. So I guess it wasn't a surprise when I was called in by a government official and said that the French community, collectively, wanted me to come and talk to them. I've been to Europe. I go to Europe frequently for business, but this was the first time, and I've stayed under the radar, but this was the first time I had to go publicly. And in a country like France, with 15% of the population is Muslim, it represented a problem. But I'm the guy that runs into burning buildings with gasoline cans, so they picked the right guy. Okay, so why? There were 2 aspects to this mission. One, the ostensible one, was Aliyah, and the second one was another project I'm involved with, associated actually with Aliyah, which is to create a new Zionist leadership. And this is done under the auspices of the World Zionist Organization, specifically with an organization called the Zionist Foundation, New Zionist Foundation, which is just a few minutes away from here, actually. So I went. And the French community is unusual because ever since Napoleon, like Teddy Roosevelt, he could only accept Jews as Frenchmen first and Jews second. And this is basically the same thing that Teddy Roosevelt said famously at the turn of the century with American Jews. And the French, of course, have this tradition of laity, which is an anti-religious Republican notion of government. And in spite of the Dreyfus case, in spite of what happened during the Second World War with Vichy and the full participation of the French police, national gendarmerie in the collection of Jews at Drancy for forward posting to Auschwitz and other murder camps, the French still felt their first loyalty to France. They were Frenchmen of the Mosaic tradition, so to speak. And starting with the influx of Muslims from around the Middle East and North Africa, this notion of being Frenchmen first and Jews second was called into question. The stories that I could relate of what's happened to certain French Jews would absolutely stun you in terms of the violence directed at them. So I asked my government friend, why did they want to see me in particular? And they said there were two reasons. One, that like them, I am from the diaspora, so I understood the push and pull of Aliyah. And second of all, they said I knew what it was like to be abandoned. And I was stunned for a second when I heard this, and I said, why? Because that's the way they feel. And he said, yes, they feel abandoned. Okay, so I went. And it was a real education for me. We were in Nice, Marseille, which is incredibly dangerous. There's Islamic graffiti everywhere. Through the night, all I heard was automatic rifle fire. We went to Aix-en-Provence, which is beautiful, but they're infested also. And then to Lyon, which is a beautiful community, and they're also infested. And then to Paris, which I hadn't seen in, since 1984. And it was a city I didn't recognize anymore. So what was the problem with the Aliyah from there? There are literally tens of thousands of families that have completed the Aliyah process, and they're not getting any support at all or even encouragement from the Israeli government. Quite the opposite. Who are these people? Well, they run the gamut from Dati Leumi to highly secular to Haredi, but they all share one thing in common, and I'll be quite blunt about it. Their fear of and hatred of Muslims after what they've gone through. I cannot begin to explain what it's like to live actually the way my relatives lived in Germany in the 1930s. Well, I just got a taste of it. You can't have any outside manifestation of Judaism. Women and men can't wear a Mogen David. You dare not speak Hebrew. And when you leave a shul, like we did with the Rambam, which is a beautiful Moroccan shul in Paris in the 17th arrondissement, you had to make sure that you went through a process, taking the kippah off, taking any outward sign of Judaism off. And the security people would tell you when it was clear to leave. Go to the right, go to the left, there's nobody on the street. So these people, the three groups of people I spoke with were the officials in France, from the consistoire and the CRIF, and I won't get into my conversations with them because that was privileged. A bunch of entrepreneurs that are ready to decamp and come here with their wealth, except for the problems with the Israeli tax authority that wants to basically rob them of everything they have. And normal French people that I gave a lot of speeches to, and I got better feedback from them than I provided them. Now, the one thing I talked to some French university students, and I asked them whether they were planning on coming here to finish their schooling. And they said, why? It would be going from the frying pan into the fire. When all the university presidents of Israel issued this most hypocritical joint statement about welcoming Israeli or Jewish American collegians to Israel, I had to, if I didn't laugh, I would cry. The one thing this country needs to do is get rid of every university president and clear the administration out of every school of higher education in this country. Why? Because the only thing they're concerned about is freedom of speech. That's all. So you're going to take these traumatized kids from the United States and bring them over to a society that you think in a collegiate environment will be supportive and warming and holistic and Zionistic, and you're going to really expose them to, well, Tel Aviv University, Haifa. I'm banned in Haifa, by the way, University of Haifa. I was supposed to give a speech there, and I was told by the university administration that my presence would be problematic for the Arab students. Okay? Well, I was kind of happy about that. I'm causing somebody some grief here. So, before people like Gil Troy, who issued this ridiculous call for American university students to come to Israel, he called it the Eucalyptus Plan. I think people like that should really be quiet and educate themselves as to what the actual reality is for Jewish students on Israeli university campuses. I have, and it isn't good at all, quite the opposite. So here I came to encourage French university students to come and finish their degrees in Israel, and boy did I get a lecture. You know, clean your own house up. And I accepted that as valid. As far as the rest of the French community is concerned, and I'm using a collective term for them because they're basically indistinguishable now. When I talked to them, what were they afraid of? They were afraid that they were going from the frying pan into the fire because they don't believe that our political establishment or our military will protect them from another October 7th. This is why I went looking, well, I'll be honest with you, looking for funds to promote this program we have to create a new Zionist leadership. And I was very careful with them, being a former Galut Jew myself. I said, I understand that a lot of you are not going to be making Aliyah for various reasons. I lost almost my entire German family for much the same reason we might lose a large part of the French community as well. They were comfortable. And they just didn't believe it would happen. So I said, whether you're staying or whether you're going to make Aliyah, the existence of a strong Jewish government here is going to be critical for both of you. Of course, for those making Aliyah, the benefits are obvious. But for those of you that are staying, you have to understand that the existence of a strong nationalist, Jewish, independent homeland that will have your back if things get out of hand, really out of hand here, is absolutely critical for you. And so I was soliciting help from both groups at that point. But the bottom line, I think, of my trip was the fact that the French community feels utterly abandoned. Utterly. They feel the Israeli political establishment, not just this current coalition government, but that the political establishment doesn't care about them at all. And they feel that way because, well, they're very... I'm trying to be diplomatic about this. They will vote right when they come home here. And there are certain people in the Aliyah ministry and in other ministries of a leftist persuasion that do not want them here because of that. And that's something that's, I think, has been known, but nobody's doing anything about it. So right now there are approximately 50,000 French families, not individuals, that have completed the Aliyah process. And there's no one to talk to for them. No one. It seems as if no one here really cares.
or gives a damn about them at all. When I've talked to people here about new housing technology that's going to be needed to rapidly build out good quality construction homes, not apartments, but homes, nobody's interested. When I talk to people about jobs for these people, because they're very well educated, nobody, the legal profession and the scientific profession and the doctors and the engineers, they see them as threats, as competition, which is anything but the case. So they're feeling, these professional groups are feeling resistance, that people don't want them here because they'll be threatening somebody's job. And certainly when it comes to the issue of education, boy, oh boy, did I get an earful. Their understanding, and it's quite accurate, of the Israeli educational system, not just at the university level, but all the way down, is that it's below a third world country. Completely. Unprofessional, stupid, and counterproductive. Those were some of the nicer things I heard in describing the Israeli educational system. Dysfunctional was another one. Funny that you say it in French, but it was clear it was dysfunctional. So here you have, in conclusion, here you have a situation where you could have 250,000 new citizens with skills, first world skills, coming in with a mindset that wants to learn about being Jewish, because the vast majority of them are not religious, and now they want to be. They want to know why they're hated. Okay? It's an odd way of looking at it, but okay, it's a beginning. So they're not being helped. And think about this, 250,000 first world Olim coming in, what they could give us in terms of education, science, engineering, medicine. It's almost endless what they could bring. And nobody wants them. They're not made welcome. And that's why they wanted to talk to me, because they couldn't understand why someone like me who had been abandoned for 30 years wanted to come home. And I ended up basically encouraging them to understand that as a Jew, you're connected to the land and people of Israel, to Torah. The governments come and go. They're horrible. They're a plague. They are a plague on our country. But our faith in God, our belief al pi Torah Israel, for the Am, for Eretz HaKodesh, this is eternal. And this is what I tried to explain to them, is what they have to attach themselves to. Yeah, it was hard for them to understand why I came home after everything I went through. But I had to encourage them to understand that the people, and the land, the people, our faith, didn't abandon me. Okay? It was this stinking, rotten government system that we have here that did. And that also produced October 7th. It's not left or right, it's both. Including the army, of course. So hopefully I gave them some chizuk to come home and to keep faith with the fact that we want them and we'll get them. But I'll be honest with you. Bottom line, unless we have a new government with a new mindset towards Aliyah, not just to bring them here, but to also make them welcome. These people are in need of rescue. This is not normal Aliyah. This is why I was sent. This is a rescue mission, and nobody is awake to this, or if they are, they're doing precious little. So I've been told that I usually make people depressed by my speeches. But the fact of the matter is, I tried to use my decision to come home as a motivation for these people to keep faith. I mean, because if someone like me can come home after what happened to me, you know, they should draw inspiration from that, not depression. So that's what happened during my fantastic week in France. So, any questions? None? No. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The left has been very good in this country in terms of indoctrinating a generation of bureaucrats and officials. And that's why we're in this mess right now. So what we're trying to do is create an alternative leadership from the ground up, selecting up-and-coming politicians and bureaucrats, for example, entry-level bureaucrats, who can go to a course that we're going to be teaching over 3 years to prepare them to understand, for example, why we're here, what our mission is, what our future is, and how we should see ourselves in the world, not as adjuncts of the American empire. We're local to this place. We're local, and we have to get rid of these shackles of the diaspora existence that we led for 2,000 years. That was an aberration. That was a complete aberration. We're trying to teach people to pick up where we left off when Rome destroyed us, and to get that mindset of defense of our rights as unique individuals living under God's grace. Not, we're just like a normal, Western country that came in with colonialists and pushed the indigenous people out. This is what the left is teaching now. So we're trying to create this new Zionist leadership based primarily on religious principles. Understand Torah, understand where we came from, understand why we're here. And the first Zionist was not Theodor Herzl. It was Avram Avinu with Lech Lecha, right? Well, this comes as a shock to some people here. But we're trying, and we will continue to try.
Okay, we're going to have a very quick 2-minute speaker before our next panelist. Actually, maybe we can bring up the panelists already and start moving up to the table. And I want to invite Mayor Indoor to give 2 minutes. He's the founder of Sarel, a 2-minute talk about his experience. Mayor Indoor.
אני מעדיף בעברית, אבל okay, so I'll speak with my bad English. Mr. Pollard, Rabbi Pollard, activist Pollard, where are you? I'm going to answer you, to react to what you said. You say we need new leadership. I'm going to change the triangle. There's no leadership, activist, and they are above. You wouldn't be released from the prison if not people who were not in the government, who were fighting for you. It was in the office of the terror victim. You remember that guy from all the activists were not people from the government who pushed the government. We met together in Hebron. Hebron wouldn't be returned with Jews without the activists, not leadership. You can call them leadership, but I'm afraid from the word. Or leadership, so we get politicians and etc. We have to change the attitude and to be activist, fire in the eye, and knowing that we'll not get any תודה רבה. אפילו לא מצפים לקדוש ברוך הוא לתודה כאילו. We are fighting for the nation. If we would know that, then I'm going to, 1 minute more. I'm an officer in the army, lieutenant colonel, and I'm very mamlachti. When I saw in the last war now that people are doing without discipline, everybody open a kitat konenut, they're making campaign for money. Usually I always looked above. I was trusting the leadership of the army. I'm still trusting in a way. But now I'm changing my mind that what happened in that kitot konenut, and that everybody ran to help out, included in my family. Okay? In my family, people, Simchat Torah, went to fight without knowing with whom, just to save. So that should be hamanganon, of the whole situation. More people activists, people will fall down, some groups will not continue, but spread it. As more will spread that, we'll get 30%. That's better from to be relying on who is above and how we're going to change it in politicians. Gush Emunim was not leadership, activists. Of course, later few of them went to Politica. But they admit after it, Hanan Porad admitted it was a mistake. We are not the leadership, we are the activists. I think the fishermen who organized that wouldn't come without the activists of Rabbi Yehuda Chazani and other people. And now he's sitting there, he is the activist who started it. That's the system he's behind. זה התשובה לך.
Thank you, Colonel Lindor. For our next moderator, for our next panel, I want to introduce Ari Abramowitz. He is the co-founder of the Rugot Farm on the tip of settlement in southeastern Gush Etzion. Along with his partner, Jeremy Gimpel, Ari has spent the last 2 decades advocating and encouraging Aliyah in diaspora Jewish communities around the world. Ari.
Shalom, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to try to make this tight. Our goal here is to engage, to keep this dynamic. This is a critical conversation for this point in Jewish history. 2 years ago, I stood here in this very conference room at a conference about Aliyah organized by the same great Tzvi Fishman, Kol HaKavod Tzvi, Eifo she'ein ish, tishtadel liot ish. It's critical to have a conference like this. And I made 2 points then. The first point I made back then was sounding the alarm is not the way to go when it comes to advocating and encouraging Aliyah, screaming danger from the rooftops, showing the radical dissolution of American society, and Jews are being ripped apart in the middle of it, the Jewish standing, the Jewish safety, the Jewish assimilation, everything that is facing the Jewish people today, and screaming, you got to come home for your lives. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Not only doesn't it work because it's curiously ineffective, but also I think it's beneath the dignity of the land of Israel. People should be coming to Israel and running to a life of meaning and passion and the fulfillment of the 1,000-year-old dream of Shivat Zion, the greatest revolution in world history. So that's number 1. Thank you, Avi. And the second point I made was, don't push for Aliyah. It's just too big and formidable a thought. For us here in this room, we look at our Aliyah date, and it's a day that we celebrate. It's like a birthday. It's one of the greatest, happiest days in our lives. But a lot of people, understandably, it's such a formidable ask to pick up your family, leave to a country that we've heard a lot about right now, and we just hit the tip of the spear about the endemic problems in the government here in Israel, and a new economy, and new jobs, new language. It's just a lot. So I said, don't push for Aliyah. Just advocate for a sabbatical. Come for 1 year, because I just know the way things work. When you come and you breathe the air of the land of Israel and you walk the earth of the land of Israel and you meet just the Jews, not the government and the politicians, and just the Am Yisrael, you can't go. Once you just take that red pill, there's just no going back. So that was what I said, but the truth is that was a very different conference. That conference was 2 years ago, and it seems like 20 years ago. We're in a very different world right now. And so this is not really an Aliyah encouragement pep rally. This is not, we're not here to encourage Aliyah. This is not about the why of Aliyah. This is more about the how. The why you can see on the campuses. I don't know if you're watching live, but it's insane what's going on campuses right now as we speak throughout America, throughout the West. The vandalized cemeteries, the burnt synagogues and restaurants. There's a revitalized wave of Jew hatred that is sweeping throughout the world, and every Jew feels it deep down. They can stick their head in the sand and delude themselves and say, oh, it's against the Zionists and I'm not a Zionist. But the collective memory of Am Yisrael is being activated. The collective consciousness, we're all feeling it and we know what's happened. So this is not necessarily about the why, it's about the how. How can we make Aliyah an easier process, a smoother process, a more affordable process? There's so many Jews that are afraid of the idea. How can we really greet them with open arms and encourage them to come? How can we take Aliyah from this fringe movement of the most courageous to being a mainstream movement that doesn't take all the courage in the world, but it just makes sense? I know that sounds like beyond us to even do such a thing, but it should at least be the goal that we're aspiring to. And so that's what we're talking about today. Really, the question is, how do we get this Aliyah application at least in the hands of every Jew? Yehuda, when you go to America to these colleges, just let them know it's an option. It's a real thing. Fill it out and you could come here. It's a real option. How do we make everybody realize that that's a real thing? And so I'm going to stop talking here right now, but I'll say that we have panelists that I'm very excited. I gave a lot of thought of every single person who I invited to come here. Yishai Fleischer, he's the spokesman of the Jewish community of Hebron. He was an advocate, the Aliyah advocate in my mind before it was a cool thing. And much of the credit for my Aliyah, or blame for my Aliyah, is exactly in the hands of Yishai Fleischer, who has inspired me and many others to come and make their lives in Israel. We have Eve Harrow, an incredible, passionate, arguably one of the greatest tour guides alive in Israel today. That's simply true. She's an educator, a podcaster. She's an activist for Yudan Shomron. She lives in Efrat. She's from Los Angeles, and she made Aliyah in 1988, right, Eve? 1988. And she has inspired so many people to make Aliyah. Eli Michel, I could go on and on about this guy. Rabbi Eli Michel, he's involved in many great things here in Israel. For example, the Mizrahi magazine. You guys heard of that? It inspires us. It's an incredible piece. You should get your hands on it. But one of the things I respect the most about Rabbi Eli Michel is that he left his position as the head rabbi of Congregation Suburban Torah in Livingston, New Jersey. Left the congregation, didn't know where he was going to land, how he was going to land, what was going to be, came here to Eretz Yisrael, and that's a great thing. We have, Shkoyach. And we have Jeremy Gimpel. You know Jeremy, he's the co-founder of the Aragot Farm, Land of Israel Network, the Land of Israel Fellowship, and he has been a fierce advocate for Aliyah over the last 2 decades. So, anyways, let's just start. Let's dive in, guys. Yishai, if we could start with you. How do we facilitate Aliyah? How do we make this happen? What do you have to say?
Okay. Shalom, everybody. Thank you, Ari. And thank you to my wonderful co-panelists who are all heroes in my life. I want to first thing thank Tzvi Fishman, indefatigable Tzvi Fishman, great dancer as well, and a great author. My kids love his books. And my good friend Josh Wander, who's a Jew who's been everywhere and does everything to rescue and strengthen Jews. And he's a good friend of mine. I was just at his house for a Shvi Shel Pesach on the Mount of Olives. And of course, Jonathan Pollard, the Asir Tzion, whose picture and articles I had on my tefillin in my backpack. And I have to apologize that I was one of the people that may have led to a shortening of the life of Esther Pollard. And the way I did that is one time I got so upset about the situation of Jonathan Pollard that I wrote an article called Jonathan Pollard is Dead. And the point of the article was that how would you feel if you read this article And Esther Pollard called me, and she was flipping out and livid and about to kill me. And I said, Esther, I could tell from what you're saying that you didn't read the article itself. Read the article. She called me back 10 minutes later, and she was apologetic. But it really upset her. And that was the point, was to upset our generation about Jonathan. And there he is, alive and well. So Baruch Hashem, I want to clap for that. A great man who was an Asir Tzion and now continues to fight for Zion. When I was at Yeshiva University, I was writing for a newspaper called The Commentator. I wrote an article saying, why isn't Yeshiva University doing more for Aliyah? And I had suggestions, practical suggestions. One of them was that we should have career placement for people in Israel. Why should we just have career placement for America? Could it be that an Orthodox Jew or a Jew learning at YU may be interested in living in Israel, the most exciting project of the Jewish people in 2,000 years? So I recommended that the school would have also career placement. Zev Ornstein, who was the head of the Israel Club, read that article, was like, that's a great idea, went to the Jewish agency, got them to send a shaliach every 2 weeks to help with job placement in Israel, and got YU to give him an office. Okay? It was a simple idea. I wrote it, he fulfilled it. All right? So it got me always thinking that we could do practical things to move things forward. I brought a little show and tell. When I was at YU, we made these pins. And we handed out about 50,000. I didn't know the first thing about fundraising. They said, I'm making Aliyah. You see that? I'm making Aliyah. Here they are. And I have a few during Pesach cleaning. I found some extra pins. So I have a few to give out, some of the classic I'm making Aliyah pins. Also Aliyah Revolution. We came up with that phrase. And later on, as Ari remembers, it became a phrase in the news that CNN covered it. And I had one more, which was called, for those people who made Aliyah, I had a pin that said, keep making Aliyah. All right, that's us, right? So we keep making Aliyah today. But we handed these out. We were trying to make Aliyah cool. And that's what we did. We handed these out on the subways. We'd see somebody who was Jewish, we'd hand one out. And when Jews would be refused one of these, I would be like, I wanted to make another pin that said, I love Gullus, okay? But I never made that. I wanted to be like, oh, take this one instead. But we did make, at the time there was the Got Milk ads, we got Home. And we were just trying to do everything to get it into consciousness. Get it into consciousness. That's what we're trying to do all the time. Because notwithstanding the very correct things that Jonathan said, that there's a lot of problems, it's still a dream of 2,000 years. You just got to make it cool. And that's one of the greatest challenges out there, which people like Yehuda are doing, it's just making it cool. Practical ideas very quickly. A campus movement needs to be started. I tried to start it in earlier years. It didn't work out, but I think now's the time to do it. A campus movement. Campus is a place where people are rebellious and they're thinking about their future. This is a great time to catch them and to say to them, come build the Jewish state. Campus is the place to do it. Harness that revolutionary atmosphere and get them to think differently. You also have to have good options for them to come to Israel and live, like practical options. You know, we already have beautiful women, so that's great. We have great food, that's great. You know, but like, okay, but you need a house and you need a job. And for example, I have a friend who created a yeshiva called Torah Tech. This is half-day Torah, 1 day Torah, 1 day, apprenticeship in high-tech companies. I sat with these kids. They are making their future. They're connecting with Israeli companies. They will make a future here. The other thing that I want to mention, which is not represented here at all, is a humongous swath of Jews who can make Aliyah, would make Aliyah, and that's Haredi Jews. Haredi Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews. The truth of the matter is, if you push on them enough, they will see the light of Eretz Yisrael. I worked at Nefesh B'Nefesh for a few months, and one of the ideas that I had was, let's start an office in Brooklyn. Bug them. That's what I've learned about Orthodox Jews. Bug them enough about Israel, show them in the Torah, it will start to seep in to some percentage level. If I had time right now, and I recommend somebody else does this, I would make stickers. I would go to Brooklyn where there's about 800,000 Jews. Brooklyn is still the heart of the American Jewish world, especially the Haredi world. Sticker every place. Come up with don't talk blue and white. Talk black and white. You know what I mean? Talk Haredi talk. Talk their language. Don't sell it to them like, Herzl and Ben Gurion. They don't like that brand. Sell it to them with Gedolim and Yeshivas and Torah. Sell it to them that way. I don't care. I'm selling Eretz Yisrael, not Medinat Yisrael. You don't like blue and white? You don't have to have it. So I would really go into Brooklyn and just bug them all the way. I'm finishing up. Speaking of campuses, what was the most successful part of Israeli education, propaganda, hasbara throughout this war? I think we've done an abysmal job. But one element that we've done a great job is in songs. There's been some amazing war songs. Amazing. My kids know Harbu Darbu. They're like, you know, Harbu Darbu and Am Yisrael Chai by Yair Golan. What's his name? Not Yair Golan. What's his name? The other Golan. Eyal Golan. What a song, you Ribono Shel Olam. It's like, wow. Let's talk to one of these guys. Let's make an Aliyah song, an Aliyah anthem. When I was in my other hat, I made a CD with great Aliyah songs. My idea was that the CD would live in somebody's car and bug them until they would make Aliyah, and such was the case for many, many people. Let's get artists to make songs, anthems. Make it cool. Make it cool. Make it cool. If Eyal Golan made an Aliyah song, French Jews would overcome all the challenges and would come to our crappy country. I mean, a great country. All right. I'll finish it up with one last thing, which is I came up with an idea, which is an Aliyah boat. The idea was that the Aliyah would take place. How many people make Aliyah from America a year? 2,000 to 3,000. How much does one of these nice cruise ships take? About 2,000 to 3,000 people. Wow! Can you imagine the Jews waving goodbye to Mrs. Liberty, to the Statue of Liberty out there, and saying thank you for all the good that you've done for us, and now we go on to the Eretz Yisrael. I mean, that's the way to think, is to make it dramatic, to make it exciting, to make it a generational thing. If I saw a picture in the New York Times of Jews waving goodbye to Lady Liberty, that would be amazing. I actually researched it. It was when I was working on BN. Not an easy project. It would cost a lot of money, but we would have ulpanim on the boat, and we'd chop in good speakers and all that kind of stuff. It could be an amazing thing, a generational thing. We've got to do stuff that will, wow. We got to make it wow. We got to make it exciting. We got to make it cool. And of course, as much as possible, we got to make our country as welcoming as possible. Make it the best country that we can. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Yeah, Yishai actually taught me a lesson that I just want to say here very quickly, because I think it's important that all of us know this. I didn't understand the concept of individual empowerment, I think, really until I met Yishai and the concept of activism, because I remember when we were talking, you came up with this idea of Aliyah Revolution, you were pushing it, and I was like, okay, good luck, Aliyah Revolution, good for you. And then you just printed up, maybe you wrote up like 10 posters, you brought it to an Aliyah arrival, and then 2 days later, I got a link. I'm Christiana Amanpour with CNN International. In Tel Aviv, we have an Aliyah Revolution. It's like, what is going on? Like that, all of us here may seem like it's a small group of passionate activists, but each one of us can really change the whole picture, the whole story. And with that, I want to introduce Eve Harrow, who is a story maker, a story changer. And Eve, eager to hear.
Yes, good. So a couple of months ago, I was on my way to the States. I was at the Tel Aviv airport, and I was speaking to the woman sitting next to me. She and her husband had come to volunteer. And I said to her, you know, I cry every single day since October 7th. Out of joy, out of grief, most days out of both. I said to her, you know, I'm amazed that L'Oreal hasn't taken this opportunity to develop a new mascara. Can you imagine? We have all these people here. And she looked at me and she said, I'm the director of research for L'Oreal. I said, right. She said, no, I really am. I said, wow. Okay, so we had another interesting discussion. But the reality here is, and the only word that I found that describes it is a Hebrew word, and this conference will be a success when it's held in Hebrew. And that is, I think, also a major, major difficulty for people who want to make Aliyah, is that they do not know Hebrew. I don't want to get into a whole discussion about Jewish education in America. I'm just talking about Hebrew and the real lack of being able to speak it fluently. This the Europeans have nailed, and other people have. American Jews tend to not really know Hebrew. And that is a very important thing. We should all be able to read Makor Rishon or whatever newspaper of choice it is and be able to converse and feel at home in this country. That would make it much easier for them. But the word that I've been using to describe the last few months is hazui, which I suppose the closest definition is surreal. I looked around when Ari talked to me about this conference, and I thought to myself, to some degree, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but if I do, it won't be the first or last time that I do that. I seem to be spending a lot of my time doing that these days because I feel like I'm out of time to go through the motions, is that this conference to some degree is a projection of our reality here. I'm not saying, isn't it marvelous that the campuses have all exploded across America, but it has allowed us to some degree to be distracted from what's happening here in Israel, because we are living in an emergency situation right now, and it is so frightening and so exhilarating at the same time that there are no words for it in any language whatsoever. If you were here in Israel 2 weeks ago, it was like the miracle of Kriyat Yam Suf when Iran shot all those missiles at us, and not one, the little Arab girl in the Negev was hurt. If that isn't a nes galui, then we need to, and I hope everyone knows what that means because I'm not translating that. We are, those of us who get to live here, are living at one of the most exciting moments in Jewish history, period. And that means that it's incredibly frightening because crises offer opportunity. And everything that everybody said here is right, from the appalling lack of vision of our government, and I could do worse, but I've started to buy soap that's actually edible because there are days where I realize I do need to wash my mouth out because sometimes there are really no words other than those that I would get upset with my children for saying. But there is a lot of room here for improvement, and that's where we roll, and that's where we shine as a people. And I'm going to emphasize that as a people. This is not a group of individuals who just doesn't eat pork. Okay, from the very, very, very beginning, this was a people thing. And what that means is that some magnificent people pay the price for all of us, and some people who you actually wouldn't want married into your family look like they're rocking and rolling. And we have to understand that. But we are speaking to a Western world that's all about individualism. And we're not talking to them. We're not saying to them, listen, guys, this may actually not be the best thing for you personally, but for the Jewish people and for your little tribe and for your family, this sure as heck is. All right, when I made Aliyah, I had 3 small children. I came when I was 8 years old, not religious. My father actually is a Palestinian. He's a Jewish Palestinian who would consider himself an anti-Semite. He thinks the Jews bring it upon ourselves. Everything was stacked up against me to come here, and at age 8, I came here, and I just felt like my soul belonged here. That's not something I can explain to somebody else. You either feel that or you don't. Everybody's going to have their own experience. But if we don't understand that this is about a really, really, really big picture that stretches back thousands of years and God willing will go into eternity, then we are not talking to them the truth. And we need to be speaking the truth. And the truth is not simple. And what the left has done, and I know Simone Zimmerman, who is one of the people who founded that whole scenario of you lied to me. You know what, people? She's not wrong. She was given the fuzzy version of Israel, where everybody's running around in a kava temple and eating oranges and everything is just perfect. It's not. Am I the only person here whose children are not perfect? Okay, we all have issues in our lives. Being Jewish is a major issue. Israel is a major issue. It is flawed. I could sit here and tell you for hours and hours how flawed it is and how many things that I've done over the years, some successfully, some, as Yishai knows, and Avi Abelo know, because they were with me in the summer of 2005 when we moved down to Gush Katif and tried to stop a travesty that has cost so many lives. And we tried hard and we failed, but we tried. And that's what we have to impress on our co-religionists in America and in France and everywhere else. You need to try. This is a religion of personal responsibility and national effort. And if you don't understand that, then you have missed something critical about what it means to be Jewish. And the only place that you can play that out, and because of God's amazing grace, we have the opportunity to do it again, is here. I stood on Mount Gerizim on Thursday. I guided a group up there. We stood up and we redid the covenant at Sinai, because you stand on Har Gerizim and you talk about the blessings and curses that Joshua tells everybody when we come in, and it's the redo of Har Sinai, and it's in Eretz Yisrael. It is a 3D book here. And I'm sorry, but if you're practicing Judaism outside of Israel, you're playing a piano that's not making music. So you think you're hitting all the right keys, but no, there's no sound. This is where it's at. And is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is possibly going to be one of the most difficult things that you ever did is move to this little sliver, and the most rewarding. And at the end of whatever days we have, to be able to stand in front of Hashem or whoever and be able to say, I gave it 120%. That goes a long, long way. So I don't want to beg people to make Aliyah. I don't believe it's Kristallnacht, or they would be having the emergency Aliyah conference and not us, all right? We need to say this is a privilege in the sense that, remember what privilege used to mean? Not like white man, rich white Jewish man, which is now turned to mean. This is a tremendous privilege. And if you can't see that, then we're going to try and help you to see it. And unfortunately, the anti-Semites always make us see that over history. It's kind of sad. But we're here, and we need help. This is not a done deal. A lot of things have to be improved here. Okay, again, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about a Judaism that maybe needs to be a bit rejuvenated to fit the times that we're in. And that means that you can be a part of it. How exciting is that, not to sit on the sidelines, but to be a part of shaping Judaism and our future? Is there anything more exciting than that? And frightening. And it's a big job. And no one's going to guarantee you anything. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real deal. This is where we've come to after all these years. And if you still consider yourself Jewish, after 3,500 years of oppression and Nazis and all these burning in hell people, then you have a role to play. It's not just an accident. And you need to take that role and take it seriously. And this is where it's playing out. We need you and you need us. Okay, is there anything greater than that?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Eve. Rabbi Eli Michel.
Thanks so much for having me. So on Thursday, I was reading the American Rabbis WhatsApp group. I'm still part of it until they kick me off.
It's coming.
It's coming soon. But, I read it because it makes me crazy. It gets me furious. And I was saying the other day, I thrive on fury, so it's good for me. They were debating on that particular day. They had heard that there was going to be a non-Jewish rally in support of the Jews of Colombia. And is this good? Is this bad? They had a whole, very rabbinic back and forth for a long period of time. But what struck me was how every rabbi on that group missed the key question, which was whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't care. Whatever you guys think is fine. But there are 2 million Jews in New York, New Jersey. And how many of them are coming to Colombia to stand up for their brothers and their sisters? It's shocking. I mean, there were rabbis there of shuls in Manhattan. And instead of planning and getting their congregants, I mean, most of them were hotels, let's be honest. But nevertheless, there were still some Jews in New York. Not everybody goes to a hotel on Pesach, right? And why can we still not pull it together? There's only, 8,000 lunatics in Colombia and a few million of us, and we still can't pull it together? So what's going on with the rabbis, with the leadership? I think that's what Ari wanted me to come and to share just a couple of words about. I think there are several issues. If you go to Yeshiva University, and I love it, it's my alma mater. I went to like a zillion schools there, all different degrees and all sorts of stuff. I owe a lot to Yeshiva University. If you go to to REITs, the rabbinical school, and this already was 20 plus years ago when I was getting smicha. But if you go there, you'll find a tremendous emphasis on how to care for people, right? How to be an amateur psychologist, right? Which is what a rabbi basically is, right? An unprepared and uneducated psychologist, doesn't cost as much as as my wife, who's a psychologist. And you hear all about that, and they try to train you in that way, and that's wonderful, and you learn halacha, and you learn all these wonderful things. But you know what you never hear about? If you're in rabbinical school at Yeshiva University or any other place, I don't mean to pick on YU in particular, you never hear about leadership. Jewish leadership. That to be a rabbi is not just to be there for people whose mother has died, which is of course important, and that's a big part of it. Right? To be a rabbi is not just to answer halachic questions. To be a rabbi is to stand up for your people, to lead. Right? It just came into my mind the other day. Where have you gone, Meir Kahana, or where have you gone, Rabbi Avi Weiss? It doesn't matter, right, left, makes no difference. Our nation turns its lonely eyes to you, right? Where are the rabbis today who actually stand up and do things that might be a little bit uncomfortable? Right? Whatever angle they're coming from, right? They don't exist. They don't exist. right? And that's a real problem. Right? In America, you will not find rabbis that way anymore. So that's this misconception of what it means to be a Jewish leader, a rabbi, right, is a big part of the problem. So that's one challenge. There's also, we have a challenge of fear, right? A fear of breaking consensus. America is an organizational culture, right? With all these big, wonderful Jewish organizations, they all do wonderful, great things. Like we said, YU before in the OU, and here we have Mizrahi and all these different kinds of organizations, big organizations, right? Who, because they're looking to raise money all the time, are afraid to say anything to the right, to the left. Right? There's a reason why, if you look at Jewish newspapers in America, right, the number one reaction, at least that I have, is boredom. Right? They don't say anything. There's very little in these papers. Whereas if you open up your average religious Zionist freebie paper, right, that shows up in your shul, it's unbelievable, right? They're arguing, they're debating, it's about the nation, and whereas like you open up the American paper, it's like TABC hockey, or something like that's the biggest story. They don't say anything because there's like a chill that's been placed over everyone. And all these organizations, they're all wonderful people. All my rabbi friends in America, they're lovely guys, but they're not raised to be leaders, they're not trained to be leaders. And they're afraid to say anything that will be out of consensus because they'll get slapped and they'll go right back into the middle, right? I know it. And I've tried writing things I write things that get people upset. It's basically my only hobby at this point is to write things that anger people, and the reaction is furious, way out of proportion to the number of people who might have read what I wrote. But the fact that there's somebody saying something different is it's against American Jewish culture. So we have, real problems here with American leadership, and I think I'll offer a couple of quick suggestions. I think just a couple of quick ideas that to think about how we can approach that, and maybe try to remedy this. Number one, I think we're maybe in a post-rabbinic age, not a post-Torah age. But when I say post-rabbinic, I mean I don't think that the rabbis of America are really all that influential anymore. Meaning, who's more influential? A rabbi getting up and talking to his half-empty shul that hasn't filled up again since COVID? Or an influencer online who's got, exactly right, the Rosh HaGola, Ben Shapiro, or whoever else, right? I have somebody who's got 10,000 people listening. 10,000 for the Jews is really big, right? 10,000 people listening to their podcast. That's a lot bigger than the rabbi talking to a half-empty room. And so I think we should be thinking a little bit differently instead of banging our heads against the wall and trying to get a rabbi who's spent his life investing in exile to try to let's try to find those influencers. And a lot of them are young, and young people are a little bit more open. That's number one. And number two, there are rabbis, there are leaders out there who, with some encouragement, could grow into a role like this. They won't do it on their own, right? There aren't that many. Rabbi Meir Kahana and Rabbi Weiss, they don't grow on trees. But if there's a group where they can kind of rely on each other and create their own little bit of a consensus, where they don't have to feel like they're entirely alone, that can help them stand a little bit more komamiyut, with the back held up straight. I think very often, there are people who are mumbling and grumbling. I have to believe that there are some rabbis out there that really do care and are open and do believe this. I'll tell you, one of the most important rabbis in America, I texted him after the Teaneck riots a few weeks back. I said, Rabbi, maybe it's time to wrap up operations in Teaneck. What do you think? And he goes, I was just talking to my wife about that. So I said, maybe talk to your shul about that, and you'll make history, right? But it's not so easy to talk to your shul about that, right? And so we've got to give them the strength. And maybe, my initial inclination is to attack, because I'm an angry Levite, and my forefathers killed probably some of your forefathers at Har Sinai. But that's not the right approach, right? That's not the way that's going to work. We got to give them strength. We got to give them encouragement. Find the ones that we can work with, and give them a little.
Thank you. Jared.
So, for the last 20 years, all of our friends here, all the people here, have been promoting Israel, the destiny of the Jewish people, the story that's unfolding here, the miraculous revival of the Hebrew language, Hebrew civilization, Eretz Israel, the Geula is coming, and Israel is amazing, and we of course want everyone to come here. But if we really see ourselves as part of an unfolding story, there is a storyteller who's sort of given us the end, what's going to happen. And I think that right now, more than ever, we need to look to the Tanakh and try to figure out where we are right now. And I wonder, what was it about Kristallnacht? What happened there? I mean, there were hundreds of pogroms throughout Europe, hundreds and hundreds of pogroms, but we still recognize one more than all these other ones. Okay, so some windows were broken. Why is Kristallnacht still remembered until today? What happened there? And I can't help but feel that October 7th was a moment. Kristallnacht, why we do remember it? The genie was let out of the bottle on Kristallnacht. The Jew hatred that was there, it was like the dead Jewish children that the Nile swept away. All of a sudden, the blood rose up to the top in that Makkah, and everyone saw the blood. And so Columbia University and MIT and Harvard and all of a sudden, the blood is now rising to the top. There was a moment that the genie got let out of the bottle, and I don't think the genie is going to come back in. And the truth is, the Tanakh tells us that a time like that is going to happen. It tells us that there's going to be a period of time where there's going to be Ishai Fleischers and Eve Harrows and Ari Abramowitzes, and they're going to send out, and there's going to be Nefesh B'Nefesh people, and they're going to say, no, it's the healthcare and the Jewish education, and you can come to Israel, and we're going to fish them out. It's going to be amazing. Here's what it says. Lachen hinei yamim ba'im ne'um Hashem. Here, days are coming, says Hashem. V'lo ye'amer od chai Hashem asher he'elat b'nei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. We're no longer going to say that God is alive because he brought the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt. Ki im chai Hashem asher he'elat b'nei Yisrael me'eretz tzafon u'mikol ha'aratzot. But rather, we're going to say the living God of Israel is alive because he's brought all of the Jews back from around the world. Behold, this is the next verse, Yirmiyahu, Tet Zayin. I will send for them many fishermen, says the Lord, and they will fish them out one by one, encouraging them, because Israel is amazing. And afterwards, a new era will happen, and I will send for them many hunters, and they will hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. And I can't help but feel, and I feel like in the heart of all of us, we all know something's going down. In the heart of all of us, we know that something's going down. It's called an emergency Aliyah conference, and no one doesn't really want to talk about it. But right now, we've entered into a new stage in Jewish history, maybe the very last stage. And it is dangerous right now for the Jews to be outside of Israel. And imagine if all of us, instead of saying, but Israel is amazing, and the Geula is coming, and the Hebrew civilization, all of us at one said, please wake up before it's too late. Here we have guns. Here we have God's promise. Here we have God's protection. You don't think we have God's protection? Watch, 300 ballistic missiles will fall over us, and somehow the Jewish people are still alive and well. It's not going to be easy anywhere in the world. It's going to be chavlei leidah. It's going to be birth pangs. But here we're united. Here we're together. Here we're strong. Here we are Am Yisrael. Outside we're Jewish. And the Jewish thing isn't going to make it. And so what's on my heart is, it's amazing because Ari and I have been divided on this issue for about 20 years. Where for 20 years, Ari's been screaming from the rooftops, get out of America quickly, it's coming. And I'm like, Ari, it's okay. And now I feel like, oh my God, it's coming. The flood is coming, and the only ark, the only teva that will save Am Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael. It's promised. First, there's going to be fishermen, and then there's going to be hunters. And the Jews that are listening to this, all it takes is one Black Swan event. One big event, that's it. The borders are shut, no flights, not El Al, no one. You're locked wherever you are because no flights are going anywhere. And then a mandatory draft, but I'm in Lakewood, I'm in Koilel. I'm going to go to a mandatory American draft? Who knows? We do know is that God promises that Zion will be a refuge. Here Am Yisrael will survive. Here Am Yisrael will thrive. The Geula is going to happen here, and time is running out. October 7th, the hourglass with the sands were actually flipped over.
and now the sands are dripping down. How much more time do we have? I don't know. But if people don't see that the blood is now rising to the top, it is our responsibility, being outside of America, where we're not hiding in hotels, we're watching it unfold, to shout from the rooftops that it's time to come home.
Very beautiful. You know, the MC of the event, Josh Wander, actually told me that he spoke with Rav Nachman Kahana, who said that as the final days are approaching, the gates of Eretz Yisrael will open and shut. Open and shut. Corona, October 7th, Iran. It's happened again and again. Each time I keep saying to myself, imagining, projecting myself as a Jew in New York saying, you mean I can't get on a plane now and go to Israel? I'm stuck here? That the existential crisis of that, going deep into the collective memory of every Jew, I keep on expecting this wave every time after the gates shut. And it's like that's not being listened to. And so from my understanding, I have maybe a few more minutes left of this panel. So I want to just ask one final, very brief follow-up question, because I've heard a lot of discussion also tonight about the right way to position Israel, the right way to make the case for Israel, and we're the indigenous ones and American colonialism. But I just can't help but to think I'm a simple Jew. I'm not so complicated. If people are looking at the world today, at the land of Israel, and see that there are people that went in and put babies in the oven and raped the mothers to the cries of the babies that are being cooked and burned, and that was happening en masse and celebrated. And they can't see that. And they can't know that there is good and bad, light and darkness. If you have to make the case to these people, this is not the time to be making the case. It's a losing battle, because clearly something very deeper, a new ruach, a new panim is going on Lavan. Jacob is being looked at, Yaakov is being looked at differently. And as Jeremy said, perhaps this is not the time to be making the case. Perhaps this is the time to be shouting, come home now. I want to ask all of you this question. Do you think, what should be the message that we're projecting out? Should it be about making the case about, no, there's this real genocide and ours is trying to get the terrorists and playing that game, the Hasbara game? Maybe so. Or is there a different message that we should be projecting right now? Yishai.
There's no doubt that October 7th was a Black Swan event. And there's no doubt the situation in America has soured. That's for sure. And I've spoken to many American Jews, and they all agree with me. Nobody denies that. It's soured. Even the New Yorker recently put out the April edition, said, the end of the golden age of American Jewry. That was the masthead. That was the front page. So there's no doubt that there's an end of a golden era. Is it a prelude to a big destruction? Could be not. I feel that it is important to allow, on the one hand, there are people like Jabotinsky who went around Europe and said the crisis is coming, he felt it, and some people poo-pooed him, but he was right. He was totally right. On the other hand, I could tell you, look at French Jewry. They've lived for a long time under anti-Semitism, or British Jewry, and they continue to survive. It's not so sweet, it's not so good. They start to send people. And so, or South African Jewry who make Aliyah to Australia, if anybody knows, okay? They go to Australia, you go to Perth, it's all South African Jews. And so, look, I get it. And there are people who have a keen sense, people in this table, my friend Josh, who have a keen sense for the emergency. But I say that it's hard to take away for me, it's hard to take away the dignity of the American Jew. I think the Jews are smart, they're sensitive, they know their situation. I'm not going to now tell them what they have to, this is the way I see it from I might be wrong, but I'm telling you about how I deal with people all the time. I fly there, I'm there a lot, I've got an office in Brooklyn, I know how they feel. And I say, okay, I could scream all the time and say to them, this emergency is coming. But at the end of the day, they are well-off, successful, smart people. Maybe you're right, by the way, not as smart as they used to be. There might be a dumbness to that culture right now. That might be true. But I think that we have to do our best to make Israel welcoming. And if you listen to what Jonathan said, he said when he's talking to people who know they're in an emergency, Jonathan said, but then they're like, you guys have a house to fix up. So I say, listen, let's fix up our house. Let's use this. I would change, by the name, from Aliyah, from Emergency Aliyah Conference to Opportunity Aliyah Conference. There is an opportunity right now. People's hearts are open right now. Give them a pathway. Listen, if you could groan. If you don't like it, there'll be other speakers. They'll do the other side. You don't have to worry. But my perspective is that we have to give people a hand, a leg up. For example, I'll give you an example. I am actually a newly elected official, what's it called, Motzah, council member in Efrat. I could tell you that if you're an American Jew and you want to move to Efrat, which is one of the premier places where American Anglo-Jews can live, you shall not find an apartment. You will not find one apartment for rent. And we don't have caravans. We don't have any place to, we don't have a place. If you're a multimillionaire, you might find a place, okay? If you're a regular schlub, and certainly if you're a regular student or newly married, you can just forget it. It's just not going to happen. And so the reality of our country is that we have to work hard. So right now, one of the things that I want to push as one of my agendas is to make caravans, like a caravan community for young marrieds and for people who want to check out the town for a year. I lived in a caravan for 7 years. It was awesome. Best time of my life. So I want to do that. We don't have that right now. That's just an example of practical things. So I can be here at the conference and yell out and say, you're all going to die. Okay, you know what I mean? Or
but imagine if we all did that.
Okay,
all
so
of us in unison.
You do it.
I'm
right behind you, Jeremy, okay? You do it first and I'll do it. You're all going to die.
The end is near.
Listen, if you guys think that, and by the way, you're not totally wrong. That's why I said that there's an opportunity, especially on campus, to give them a different opportunity. I think you can harness that energy. But when it comes to, let's say, for example, Haredim in Brooklyn, if you're going to tell them you're all going to die, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to buy it. They're just not going to buy it. And they love the situation of we're all going to die because that's exactly how Haredim thrive. In situations that we're all going to die, that's exactly where they do their thing. Okay? They love a real feeling of the Paretz and the Galus and the whole thing. They know how to live in that. Okay? That might be, it's funny, but it's true. And so you have to be, in my opinion, partially practical and be real. I'm going to say it like this. Consider if we're all going to die is not some kind of inner taiva that some of us have for the end of the world and for things to. I think that things sometimes go cataclysmic and sometimes go process. Oftentimes process, long process. And the question is, how are we going to make it over a long process? My parents, by the way, came out of the Soviet Union after a cataclysmic event, which was the 6-Day War. If you guys want to make a war where we kick some serious butt around here, get rid of the jihadists, and have what the Torah says is the houses of the Arabs for Jews to move into, make a cataclysmic event like that, be big and bold, and kick some serious butt around here, then okay, awesome. But in the meantime, if you're going to tell the other guy that he's in trouble, in the meantime, you're the one that have 1,200 Jews killed in one day, then okay, maybe you should clean your house first before you go crazy in the other.
Okay, thank you, Yishai. So for me, this is
Sorry,
not.
Sorry about that. You know?
No, it's okay. A little bit of a downer. Can I get everyone with a boo? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. For me, this is not really. It's not about theology. This isn't about Aliyah. This isn't about Jeremiah the prophet. This isn't about This is about pikuach nefesh. This is about pikuach nefesh, and I feel like for us not to, on some level, whatever effective level that is, to be sounding the alarm and alerting people to what is really happening. The blood of our Jewish brethren is on our hands. Rabbi Eli Michel, what say you?
I asked a friend of mine in Teaneck, I said, what would it take for people to say, you know what, now's the time? He said, and I think he included himself in this, blood on the streets. Either they have to kill a Jew in the streets of Teaneck, lo aleinu, or they have to, or blow up a synagogue, and that's what will make people move. So short of that, he goes, no, nothing's happening. So people, it's hard for people. Let's not forget, right? So my friend, mid-40s, he has a job that doesn't translate here, and his wife did not grow up going to a religious Zionist camp or anything like that, and she has no interest in coming to Israel. and he feels stuck and doesn't know what to do. So what am I going to tell him? Am I going to tell him, well, you're a loser and you're all going to die? No, I'm not going to tell him that, right? So it makes me think of the Gemara that tells us that more impactful than all of the prophets and all the prophetesses was the signet ring of Achashverosh, right? And the decree. And frankly, where was our biggest wave of Aliyah recently? Ukraine, right? When bad things happen, the Jews will come. In the meantime, does that mean we should do nothing? No, I think we should focus on the young. I really think we should focus on the young. Young people, right, we have a much greater opportunity to bring them here, right? And there's the greatness to this younger generation. And if we doubted it before, we see how great our young people are. And there's no reason why that the young people in America can't be great either. It's just a question of moment and opportunity. Has everybody else been watching the videos of the Jews, these Jewish kids standing up in UCLA and different places? The greatest generation, my grandfathers both fought in World War II. They were only the greatest generation because of the situation that forced the greatness out of them. So these young Jewish kids in America can be as great as our young Jewish boys and girls here, who are the greatest generation of Israel. And so let's focus on the young people. When they come here, their parents will follow.
It's beautiful. One of the things that Rabbi Tzvi Fishman shared in a message he sent to me, one of his many brilliant ideas, I think he said, we need to have young Aliyah commando crack squads. I think those were the words, meaning groups of young Jews that are going to campuses in America and right by these huge tent protests of violence and anger, setting up a little table with a Nefesh B'Nefesh Aliyah application and letting them know that's it. That's it. This is the solution. It's a real option here. It's a real thing. Eve.
So I see October 7th not just as about us, but I really believe that it was the taking off the blinders as to the end of Western civilization, without trying to be bombastic. The pagan child sacrifice, bloodthirstiness of the jihadists has now been exposed. And the fact that so many people actually agree with them is nauseating, is absolutely nauseating. I keep dividing the world between Jews and our supporters, idiots and evil people, and unfortunately that membrane between the idiots and the evil seems to be quite porous at this moment. And Christianity, which has failed, it's an offshoot of the Tanakh, of us, but they took it in a completely different direction, and their inability to see, their inability to have children, not their inability, but they're just done. Europe is done, and America is following quite quickly. And this turn the other cheek and forgiveness ends up taking you down the rabbit hole where you can forgive even the most egregious things that, I'm not even calling humanity, that somebody with two legs could do to somebody else with two legs, because what happened on October 7th wasn't humanity. It was the exact opposite. It's everything that we knew was out there. It's everything that the ancient world had that we came into. I was in Egypt a year ago. I'm so glad that I went because I couldn't go now. And I saw the world from before the Tanakh was given. And it's an ugly world. It's a world where people don't matter at all. At all, the little people don't matter. Of course there were slaves in Egypt. Everybody was slaves everywhere. And we changed the world. We absolutely and utterly changed the world. We continue to change the world, and the Tanakh and us were written for today. For today. We have a chance to do this once again. So with all due respect to the people outside of Israel, I'm going to focus my limited energies on Israel, on fixing Israel so that they will beg to come here. We're not going to have to beg them to come, because it is going to be, look, every single one of us, when you walk down the sidewalk, do I have to explain to you the heroes that you're walking by? The amount of chesed and goodness that happens here every single day from from so many people, and I'm not even talking about the army and the security forces heroes, and the people whose stories we'll never hear because their heroism cost them their lives and continues to do so. So I'm going to focus on making this the Or LaGoyim, which it already is. We just have to fine-tune it, and we have to get away from the outpouring of hatred that the media and the other evil people in the world foment for their own reasons. I'm not going to be able to change the world, not even close. So I have to use my energies to try and change the society that I love, that my children, okay, I can give up on that, but the society that I love, this Israel, and make it the place that I see despite everything. Sometimes you do things because, and sometimes you do things despite. So we now have to do a lot of things despite, because there's a lot of forces out there. We have to keep our mind on, like what Jeremy said, on the bigger picture, okay? The problem with the prophets is that they didn't give a date. So that makes it a little funky, and we've had a problem in almost every generation of pulling up this nivuah and saying, it's for now, and it probably did have the potential for being for now, and I would like to believe that it is for now. But that's up to us to make it happen. We are in partnership with the creator of the world. I believe that he's out there with us, every single thing we do, but we need to do. And we need to concentrate. Those of us who are blessed to be here need to concentrate on working on this place, on getting rid of the politicians who don't deserve to be in control of our lives, who made decisions and haven't asked forgiveness. You talk about Levi, I'm also about Levi. The paradigm of leadership is Yehudah, because he owned up to his mistakes. He was not a tzaddik. He said, I messed up, both with Tamar and with Yosef. And that's what a leader does. Takes responsibility, and if he has to, makes way for other people to come and do it right. And that's what we deserve. The Tanakh spelled it out so long ago. We deserve no less. And I will not rest till my last breath to make sure that that's what we have in Israel. And then we won't have to convince people to make Aliyah. We'll have other people in the world saying, but we're not Jewish. How come we can't make Aliyah? Why is this an exclusive club only for the Jews? Because we're the ones who earned it. So you're out there, and we'll do everything we can for you as well. But this is the Jewish club, and this is the Jewish homeland. And that's what we have to be thinking about every single minute of every single day.
Beautiful. Wow. Amen, sister. Okay, so we have Rav Nachman Kahana, who has just come in, Rabbi Leo D. I want to hear from also all of you. We're going to open up the floor. This is an interactive event, so I don't want to keep this going. But in all fairness, Jeremy, you do have the right of refusal here.
Yep. This was the first time on Pesach that such an obvious question struck me. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? We eat matzah on Pesach because the Jews didn't have enough time to let their bread rise, and so they quickly got their bread and they ran out. But then it just never dawned on me. But God promised, I'm going to bring you out. And they're like, okay, God's promise. And then there was the plague of blood, and then frogs, and then hail. And you'd think like by the 7th plague, the Jews would have started packing their bags and baking their bread. And we see after 10 plagues, even then, they saw all the miracles and they still weren't really ready. They still weren't ready. And I'm like, wow, that's like Jews don't change. Here we are 3,000 years later. We're looking at the miracles of Israel. We're looking at the 6-Day War, the Independence Day War, the existence of our Jerusalem as it is right now. We see everything happen, and yet still, it's like we're not going to have time to take the matzah out of the thing. We're not going to have time because we're not really ready yet. And I just because everyone is so busy in their own personal lives. But if you just take a step back, Christianity has been of the worst enemies of the Jews in all of our history. The worst. It was better to live in a Muslim country than in a Christian country. The Christians were the worst, fueled by replacement theology and real religious Jew hatred. And then there was a little window of time where there were some Christians that were kind of pro-Israel. That time is coming to an end. If you look now on the Christian right in America, from Tucker Carlson to Alex Jones to Candace Owens to Joe Rogan now, all of them slowly but surely are reverting back to old school Christian anti-Semitism. Then we had the other side where we had the secular world, the Greeks, the Romans. Just read the book of Maccabees, what the Greek godless people did to the Jews. And then we had Nazis and communism. We know what America's left looks like, and all of a sudden now, the right and the left are both collapsing onto the Jew. And if we don't wake up now, they're literally not going to have enough time to get the bread out of the oven.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so to wind this down, I'm going to share a dream that I had, and I've never shared a dream before, and I feel ridiculous doing it. I said that I wasn't going to do it, but I've simply never had a dream like this. In my sleep at night on the 7th night of Pesach, I had this dream that we were having some sort of meeting on the roof of the Nefesh B'Nefesh offices, and in the middle of this meeting, there was this huge, massive tidal wave went up to the sky, a tidal wave of water, and we were looking, it went higher and higher and higher, and then it just washed over us. And then I woke up from the dream. I wrote it off as just another absurd dream that I have constantly all the time. I told my wife, and then during davening, it hit me, oh my goodness, that was a message that there's a tidal wave coming. Now, whether my dream is right or wrong or whatever it is, I do believe, as Josh Wander said, there's a tidal wave coming. And just this morning, I learned a Torah from Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg, if you've heard of him. He wrote a book called Tikkun HaMedinah, which I think is arguably one of the most important books to read in our times right now. The rectification of the state of Israel. And in this book, he talks about the first Rashi of the Torah. As we all know, the first Rashi says, why did the Torah begin with Bereshit? Why not with the first commandment? So when the world comes against you and says, Listim atem, you're thieves, you respond and say, no. God, Hashem, He created the world and He gave the land of Israel to who He pleases. That's the source of our right. But what Rav Ginsburg says is that message isn't meant for us to be simply saying to the world. It's not a message we need to be proclaiming. It's a message we need to say to ourselves. We need to not say those words, but live them. And the only way to truly live those words without hypocrisy is by returning to the land of Israel, by making Aliyah. When you make Aliyah, it is the greatest sanctification of Hashem's name, the greatest Kiddush Hashem, destroying and utterly uprooting the greatest Chilul Hashem, which is the exile. We need to live that truth. So thank you all for coming, for being here. And thank you, Rabbi Tzvi Fishman and Josh Wander.
The next speaker will be Rabbi David Samson. He's one of the leading English-speaking Torah scholars and religious Zionist movement in Israel today. Rabbi Samson has written 5 books, most of which are on the teachings of Rabbi Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook and his son, Rav Tzvi Yehuda. Rabbi Samson was born in Baltimore, Maryland, where he was influenced by his grandfather, who was a longtime Rosh Hashiva of Yeshivas Chavetz Chaim, Talmudical Academy of Baltimore. And after moving to Israel, he studied under the tutelage of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook for 12 years and received smicha from the former chief rabbi, Rabbi Samson.
This is simply impossible to speak after all of you have spoken so eloquently on the subject. And there is no way that I'm going to say anything that is not going to sound boring after everything that you have said. And maybe as a rabbi, I can just say, well, God agrees with everything you said. And that would probably be the most intelligent thing that I could say. But as a rabbi, I'm going to speak. And first of all, I want to thank everybody who was speaking and booing and getting booed. I've been running around Israel and America for the last, I don't know, maybe 50 years, quoting Sky Little, that the sky is falling, apocalypse now, end of the world. And I got white hair just, screaming this endlessly that the world will end today. Okay, tomorrow, maybe the day after. And just to come here and to be with so many apocalyptic people is just so empowering. And thank you. I'd like to remind Tzvi, I was together with him once, years ago. We used to walk with a rabbi from the Eidah HaCharedi, Rav Shalom Eisen. We would take him to the Kotel, Vatikin in the morning in Elul, and then bring him back. And I remember once, the sun had just barely risen. It was just, early morning after Vatikin in Elul, and we were walking the rabbi back. And Tzvi Fishman asks the rabbi, as he's walking with his cane through the small streets of Mea Shearim, Rabbi, can you tell us why American Jewry does not make Aliyah? And I heard the question and I saw the rabbi and I say, oh, we're in for something profound now. And the rabbi slowly, he stopped walking, he was walking with a cane, walked slowly, he stopped walking, and he looked Tzvi in the eye, and he answered the question with only one word, and he said, dolari. And as simple as it was, dollars. He just said dollars. That's the answer. Why American Jews do not come. And I believe that as kind of funny and without an end, I think that's it. Today, if you take a person and he checks into the Waldorf Astoria, and he rents a limo, and at the end of the day, he has to pay. And he realizes he doesn't have enough money to pay for the Waldorf, and he can't pay for the limo. So what's he going to do? Well, he's got only one choice. He's just going to stay another day. And then he stays another day, and then the second day, he owes twice as much. And he's in a bigger problem. He says, oh, what am I going to do now? Well, now I really don't have any choice. And then on the third day, so we have this guy who is stuck. And like, he's in the Waldorf and he's riding a limo, but every day he's getting more and more broke. Now, he knows that it's going to end. But if you can kick the can down the road, all right, another day, another day. This is the situation in the United States. Exactly the situation in the United States. And that the great economy is fictitious. It doesn't work anymore. And everybody can kind of pretend, yeah, well, the king, yeah, he's got clothes, of course, a lot of clothes. And one day, the day of reckoning is going to come. It's not necessarily going to come in a slow process. It's going to come as a result of some black swan event, and people will just no longer read the words, "In God we trust," on the dollar bills. They're not going to trust in that anymore. And when that moment comes, then the God of America will be destroyed. I don't know, it's like such an unbelievable kind of scenario that it's just so mind-boggling. It's even, you can't even figure out, okay, what's the next stage after that? I don't know, that's like so uncharted that it's uncharted. You can't even go back to history and figure out, well, maybe a little bit like, it's like nothing. Now, what's going to happen to the Jewish people at that moment? I don't know. But today, the balloon is still full of air, and it's, bouncing and it's working, and people have cars, and you can get planes, and you can still sell your house. And that I share everybody's wish that it shouldn't be only our own vision to realize that things are just so incredibly precarious and that it's imminent. And let me just conclude with a prayer that I'm sure we all share. Bezrat Hashem, may we all see our brethren return to Eretz Yisrael before it's too late.
We have so many star speakers that one outshines the next. But we're very privileged to have all these speakers and panelists. And now I want to call on another star speaker, Rabbi D.
Thank you, and I feel as each speaker comes on, it's cumulative. I mean, what you have to sort of say, and I apologize if I repeat all the same messages, but I think, as Rabbi Friedman once said about a Buddhist Jew who was sitting at a Shabbos table, every time he gave a Torah, the Buddhist kid said to him, That's what they taught us in the ashram. And he said, you know what? He said that the more, if it's true, you hear it in multiple places. And so I think that that might be the case. But for those of you who don't know, I'm Leo D. I've very sadly lost my wife and 2 daughters in a terror attack just over a year ago. A year ago today, I was sitting Shiva, and through Yom HaShoah. And I said this during Yom HaShoah, and I think it applies equally this year. My name, Leo D., is actually from my great-uncle, my late great-uncle, Leopold Dvalitsky, my grandfather's late brother. He was from Riga in Latvia, just as my grandfather was and the whole family. He was the only one who chose not to leave Riga, Latvia, when everyone else left in the 30s. He stayed on because his wife was very happy. They had a lovely family. They had 2 kids, and they had a nice house. And in 1942, they were massacred in their garden. The bodies were never discovered. A strange thing happened to me that my family moved during the war to the north of England to get away from the Blitz. My great-grandmother apparently died up in a small village up in the north of England and was buried there. And after the war, she was dug up, whatever the technical term is for that, and she was moved to Sfat. Exhumed. Dug up, but she was transferred to Sfat, to the cemetery there. And one summer holiday, we went with the kids, and we went to look for the grave. And we're probably the only members of the family who ever tried to do this, and we spent an hour or 2. They gave us rough ideas of where it was. We had to cut away leaves and trees and everything in order to find it, and we found it. And what was most remarkable was that her son, my grandpa's other brother, who'd actually exhumed her and moved her to Sfat, put a plaque on top of her grave in memory of his brother Leopold. And it's probably the only tombstone that obviously that he would have, and a memory of him. And it said to memory of Leopold Dvalitsky, his wife, and 2 children, who were murdered in 1942. No names. And what I said at the Shiva was, my wife and 2 kids were murdered brutally in Israel in 2023, and everyone in the world knew their names. My great-uncle, I'm named after, 80 years ago, he lost his wife and 2 kids, and nobody knows their names at all. And I think that that's part of the zechut of living in Eretz Israel, that when a Jew lives in Eretz Israel, this is our home, this is where we're meant to be, and this is where we really exist. And I want to add really to what Rabbi David said about 15 years ago, 2009, my wife and I and the kids were doing shlichut in England, the community in England, at the beginning of a 6-year stint. And one Sunday morning, my wife woke up, Lucy woke up, and she said, I had a dream. So I said, what was the dream? She said, I dreamt that house prices in Israel went up faster than house prices in England, and that the pound got weaker against the shekel. So I said, so what do I need to do? So she said, we need to sell a house in England and buy something in a frat now, so that when we eventually go back, we'll have somewhere to go. And so I sold the house we had in England, and in February 2010, I went out to a frat, and she was left behind with the 5 kids under the age of 6. It was the days before mobile phones and videos, whatever, so I had to take a digital picture on a camera and then send it back by email each night of the different houses that I'd seen. I saw about 4 houses. She chose the one that she liked, although I think I confused some of the pictures, so it wasn't exactly the one that she wanted. But in any case, we bought a house, and she didn't see it for 4 years until we made Aliyah in 2014. And by the way, looking back, both the house prices in Israel in Efrat went up much faster than house prices in England, and the shekel got much stronger against the pound because of Brexit. And at the time, I could have bought 3 houses in Efrat for the price of 1 house in London. Today, my house in Efrat is worth 2 houses in London. So that I think is speaking to what David was saying, and I think, to be honest, that's a much more important message or as important message for Jews in America who are considering waiting to be the last one to make Aliyah, because as an investor, that was my previous career, I can tell you something that, house prices don't go down when everybody sells a house. House prices go down when 5% of your neighborhood sells their house. If 5% of the people in Teaneck decided to sell a house next year, your house price will halve. If 10% decide to sell a house next year, your house price will probably quarter. And therefore, whoever sells first will get the best price. And by the way, as you talked about the American economy, which is a big bubble, as it's known that China recently has bought $135 billion of gold, and they're betting against the dollar. I think I would also bet against the dollar at the moment. The chances of the dollar being as strong as it is today in a year or two's time is very small, and therefore, what I say to people if you're currently sitting in a mansion in Manhattan, if you don't sell it soon, you may only be able to afford a studio apartment in the Negev. And that really is the case. I mean, that's true for people in Britain as well.
And South Africa, same thing.
And South Africa, yes. And we've seen it. I mean, Baruch Hashem, we talked about the negative parts of the other economies, but this economy, the Israeli economy, is strong for a number of reasons. We're the only Western country that has a positive birth rate of 3 per mother. Every other country has below replenishment and is bringing in immigrants, which is destroying the culture of each country, and some countries such as Germany will not exist within 20 years. Israel, in the meantime, has this inherent growth rate of 3% just by birth rate, and Aliyah probably much more than that as Aliyah increases. And we have an amazing workforce as well. We have not a workforce, but an army. As we've talked about, the youth here are exceptional. And to me, the greatest shock or eye-opener is looking at the students in Columbia University who are not Jewish versus the ones who are Jewish. And it's really quite alarming that the extremely low caliber of Gen Z outside of Israel and the extremely high caliber of Gen Z in Israel. I think that should be, if nothing else, if you bring up kids in America, Britain, in Europe, you should be looking at that gap, which is getting wider and wider and wider. And just last thought before I leave you on this. That same morning that Lucy woke up in 2009, I said to her, "Why do we have to move to Israel?" She said, "We cannot bring up Jewish kids in Britain." That's what she said. 2009, we cannot bring up Jewish kids in Britain. We have to come back to Efrat. That's where we knew, because we'd studied there for 4 years. That's the only place we can bring up Jewish kids. She was right. She would be saying to me now, we didn't make, we hadn't made no mistakes, there were no regrets about it. People said, do I regret making Aliyah? I say absolutely no. What happened to us, unfortunately, was a 1 in 10 million chance could have happened in Britain. If this happened to me in Britain, I wouldn't be able to recover from it, because there'd be absolutely no purpose in my life whatsoever. But Baruch Hashem, living in Israel, having 3, Baruch Hashem, lovely kids, growing up, going to the army, doing Shirut Lami, going to yeshiva, is the greatest zechut. And I think that it's the greatest honor to live here. And I think that I just wish that other Jews around the world will quickly see that as being the correct option, and will move here rapidly and make the right decision.
You were definitely someone that everyone was following after your wife, the tragic murder of your wife and your daughters. And I think that, at least for myself, your level-headedness and your ability in such a tragic time to see beyond the now and understand that you were put into a unique position to not only speak to the world, but to speak to those that came to console you. And the stories that I heard and the videos that I saw of you taking people out of their comfort zone whether it be a Hasidic Rebbe, or whether it be a delegation from the 5 towns or Boca Raton, that came to console you, and you didn't just take the consolement, you were willing and able to put it back into their face and to say to them that your influence can be so much greater here in Israel than it is anywhere else in the world. And that continues to this day when you continue to speak. I think that the obvious question that Jews around the world would ask of you, Rabbi D, is how after such a tragedy, and somewhat you answered this with your words, but after such a tragedy, how could you continue to encourage Aliyah? You know, you of all people should understand how terrible it is to be, as the spies would say, to be in the land of Israel. It's a land that eats her children. How could you continue like this? I'd love if you could just come up and if you have a response to how you could say, of all people, could say that Aliyah is still the right thing.
We live in a time of sheker, as we know. We know that the media is full of lies. We know that emet is aleph to taf with mem in the middle, is em to met. It's the whole picture. Sheker is shin kuf resh, 3 letters together at the end of the alphabet, which basically is focusing on one particular item and taking it out of context. So the sheker is that what happened to me is typical of what happens in Israel, and this is the fate of anyone who's going to make Aliyah, is they're taking a risk, they're putting their family's life at risk. The emet would be to say that the fact that my family's story became a worldwide story a year ago would seem to suggest that it's actually an unusual black swan event. Had it been a daily event in Israel, it would not have hit the news. It would have been like the same thing happening in Nigeria or in Sudan or in any sort of Arab country, which happens all the time. And so, therefore, specifically, because it became such a large event, that is proof that actually it was very, very unusual. In fact, as I said, probably 1 in 10 million, maybe even less. And therefore, you're safer here than you are in any other country as a Jew. And by the way, for those American Jews, British Jews, and South African Jews, the life expectancy, I studied also public health at one point in my past. Life expectancy in Israel, numbers are approximately, for men, 83, I think, and for women, 81. In America, they are about 5 years less, and in Britain, they're about 3 or 4 years less. Your life expectancy is greater when you step foot on that airplane and come and live here than it is in America. Despite the terrorism, despite the fact that your kids have to go into the army, you're less likely to die of heart disease, you're less likely to die because of the poor health service that you have in America and the poor diet, and you're much healthier in this climate, which is the outdoor climate, and a salad is served with every meal. So.
Thank you. With that, I would like to open up the floor to some open discussion. I'm able to give everybody just 2 minutes maximum, but if anybody in the crowd would like to say something, we would be more than happy to hear them speak. Avi? You're looking at me, so you probably want to say something. Come on.
First of all, Yashikayach to Josh and to Tzvi for putting this together, very important. And everyone who's watching, very important. Share this video with every single person in your family, in your friends' circle. It's interesting because there's not much to add, but I'll just, a summation story and then a positive note and a negative note, or the negative note then into the positive note. I've actually been flying back and forth to America the past few months and talking to American Jews, different communities, waking them up to this post-October 7th reality, and connecting all the dots for them to realize they should be coming home to Israel. Talking to religious, non-religious, all ages, all different types of communities. And again, my message is, I want you coming home to Israel because it's home. I don't want you running away from the growing anti-Semitism in America, but it's going to get bad, but come home to Israel because it's home. And the fascinating thing is that no one argues with me. Every single place I'm speaking, every community, every age group, every religious identification, they all get it, they all agree with me. And my bottom line is very much connecting with Rav Eli Michel was saying before. Again, I've been mostly talking to adults, parents, and grandparents, and I'm telling them, tell your kids to go to Israel for a university. Even with the issues of universities in Israel, it's just so much better than what your kids and your grandkids come. Also talking to grandparents, tell them to come. The future of the Jewish peoples in Israel. Don't know about you, come as well, but definitely get your kids. You'll save money. You'll be able to, for the amount of money you'll be saving, you'll be able to come visit them. They'll be getting a much better education, not the Marxism of American campuses, and not the growing anti-Semitism. So that's the one thing definitely on board, and everyone's agreeing with me. That's not saying that they're telling their kids and their grandkids to do that, or they will do that, but everyone is agreeing with me. Now, the negative. I would love, because someone asked the question, I think it was Yehuda Cohen earlier, how many Jews, you asked the Nefesh B'Nefesh representative, how many Jews would he expect to be a success story for Americans to be making Aliyah, or Americans from any one of the diaspora communities? And Yehuda threw in, let's start off with a success. You can't get more successful than Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu was 20%, right? Wow, it would be a dream if we'd be able to get 20% of diaspora Jewry to Israel. Be a dream. I think I'm being pretty realistic. It's going to be far from it. Far from it. Halavai, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we hit 20. I hope we hit 100. Just being realistic. That's the negative point, but I want to end with a positive point. Even though each and every one of us and everyone watching should be active in waking up our fellow Jews to come home. Not because it's safer, not because the education's cheaper, because it's home, and because our purpose as a Jew is to build up our Jewish society in our Jewish ancestral homeland, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us in the Torah. That's the only reason to come home to Israel. Everything else are sideshows. The good news is, close to 50% of the Jewish people today live in Israel. All right? I don't think more yet, because halachically that would make a difference. But I think. Oh yeah? Without knowing the exact number, around 50? Okay. Around 50% of world Jewry today lives in Israel. That is mind-blowing. That is unbelievable. All right, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have so much to be grateful for. We have so much to be thankful that we are part of the blessed Jews, to be part of this Jewish revolution, resettling our ancestral homeland and making the future of the Jewish people, and part of the process of fixing everything that needs to be fixed to make this the Jewish society it is supposed to be, which is our purpose as Jews, to live here in order to be L'Takeinu Lo B'Malchut Shaddai. That is our purpose as Jews. So yes, we should still be working at getting each and every Jew we can to join us. And things are getting bad, and every time I fly to the States, my wife says, that's it, this is the last time, because I don't want you to be stuck there when the skies close, and then you're stuck in America, and I'm here alone with the kids, not knowing when you're going to be coming back. So this is a very, very real concern in my personal life right now, having to fight each and every time to try to go there and try to wake Jews up to come home to Israel. It's not so simple anymore, because of the reality of the world. But with that, we have to say thank you for being part of the miracle and living in a generation where close to half of Am Yisrael live in Eretz Yisrael today. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
I would like to speak as a person who has her experience privately in Aliyah, not myself, my husband was an Ole, and publicly I was working as an activist and as a leader as well, nearly 20 years Beklitat Aliyah. And this is since 1973, and then when the boom came in 1989, when the Iron Gates fell down, and Baruch Hashem, we had a big Aliyah here. We have to learn from this experience. I would like to raise a point against things which were said from a certain people. Medinat Israel has an obligation to the Jews in the diaspora. Yes, we have an obligation. We have a very hard obligation now fighting. We have to solve very difficult problems, but Aliyah has to be the top subject, and I encourage Tzvi Fishman for his work. We have to talk on mass Aliyah. What we have to talk is on mass Aliyah, not a private Aliyah. Private Aliyah is something different. Nefesh B'Nefesh is more as a private concern, private Aliyah, doing in a good work, in a certain way, as you heard me before. But the idea is the Jewish state obligation to the diaspora Jewry. And this is something very important, which we as citizens have to take it on a private level. I will tell you something very interesting which I've learned on Yom Shvi'i, B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach. I was in Elkanah with my daughter, and they hosted a soldier, a lone soldier from Argentine. Fantastic. He came for a year on Achshara to Israel, went back for a month, and a year in the army. Something wonderful that we have in Jerusalem. There is a house in Arnona, which some good rich person, rented it, and there are 30 lone soldiers in flats there. The community took responsible, each one a different group from the community, to prepare the Shabbatot, the food for them. They are not short of anything. They've got everything. Because there was a combined effort. There was a good man with a house and a good community. The good community is us, is each of us. We have to know that we have to open our hearts and our homes when the mass Aliyah comes. This is our responsibility. Toda Rabba.
Okay, anyone else?
Richard, I don't hear you.
You sure you don't know the state of affairs of Haredi Judaism? Yeah. Yeah, sure. You'll be next, okay?
All right, so my name is Zachary Moskowitz, son of Rabbi Daniel and Levi Moskowitz. My parents made Aliyah in 1992 from New York. My parents are, they call themselves American Haredi, but they are, I was brought up in a Haredi schools. My grandfather is Irving Moskowitz, and on the 7th of October on Simchas Torah in the morning, I was called up to my unit. I served in the 551 Commando Brigade. I fought face-to-face with terrorists in Otif Aza, and I've been in Miluim since then, besides for a few breaks from the Army. If there's one conclusion that I have on this topic, also I would just like to mention that my ex lives in the United States, and I have 2 children, a son who's 12, a daughter who's 10, who live in the U.S. I just want to state a couple of beliefs that I have on the topic. So first of all, I think that the problem that we have in Israel is that we have what's called a Brit Goral, where we have like a covenant of our destiny. So we're all willing to die together. We're willing to fight together. So whenever shit hits the fan, we're ready to pick up arms and fight together. But what we lack is a Brit Goral. Maybe that's more of a destiny. But we don't have, that's one thing that we don't have as a collective, as all the Jewish people together. We're still conducting ourselves and operating as keilot. So if you go to Yonatan Behar, he'll tell you that Rav Eliezer Melamed is the Gadol Hador. And if you go to some Hasidic Jew, he'll tell you my Rebbe is the Gadol Hador, and Breslev, Lubavitch, etc. And we lack this ability to create a collective. I do not believe in the mass hysteria approach. I don't think that I don't think there's going to be another Holocaust. I think that Hashem is more merciful than that, and I don't think that also mass hysteria approach is effective. I do agree with the woman here with the peach-colored shirt and Jonathan Pollard. I agree with that. I think that the sole force that's preventing mass aliyah, by the way, I'm probably the only, besides for the fellow here, I'm probably the only ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jew, and maybe the only one here who has been around the block. I learned in Israeli Haredi yeshivas, I learned in American Haredi yeshivas, I learned in Zionist yeshivas. What I begin to say is that I don't believe in the mass approach. The sole force that's preventing aliyah is the state of Israel itself. I don't think that the state of Israel wants the Jews of North America and other Anglo-Jews to make aliyah. For 3.5 years, I had the privilege to live with my grandfather, Irving Moskowitz, who's probably one of the most influential Jews in the 20th century. And what I could share from what he said, his views were maybe closest here to Pollard's views. I myself also, together with my brothers, I have a leading company in the United States for nuclear energy. We're actually the largest company for nuclear energy. And no, that's not the reason why I don't believe in the mass hysteria approach, not because that I have large stakes in a company that's evaluated at $250 million. That's not the reason. And I believe that the only way that we will successfully convince people to make aliyah is only when we start talking about the Brit HaYehud. And I think that I thought...
Can you define that? Translate that?
The Brit HaYehud is when we start talking about, as my dad says, is when we switch the diskette and we start looking at ourselves as a collective, and we start embracing the diversity, because every community, practically in the Jewish community, they think that when Mashiach comes, everyone's going to be a Lubavitch, everyone's going to be Silberman, everyone's going to be Har Bracha, or Merkaz Harav, or Har Amor, or this one or that one. We don't embrace the diversity at all. All the people that promote Aliyah, they do it in a way of like mass hysteria, like as if you scare the crap out of people, that's going to make them to make Aliyah. That's going to cause them to make Aliyah. It simply won't. And not because that Einstein says about learning from history. I think that we will have a much better chance at convincing people to make Aliyah if we tell them, come to Israel because here together we can have a much better Gashmius. Because the bottom line is that if you agree that, and I think it's a point that you can't argue with, that if the state of Israel on a national level had an interest in the Jews being here, they would have been here. So what you mentioned about they're not going to do it because they don't want 1 million Jews from North America here, because the ones that are going to come are not my uncle whose wife is a Reform rabbi in Boston. The ones that are going to come are going to be my 2,000 plus third and fourth cousins in Williamsburg in Brooklyn who will vote Gimel, Shas, Mizrahi. In fact, my brother was one of the first Jews who who convinced over 50,000 Jews to swing and to vote for Donald Trump. And he also founded, together with Rabbi Lerner, the Eretz HaKodesh movement in the Zionist Congress. And it was the first time in history that Jews, that Haredim, since maybe many years back, have participated in the Zionist conference. And I'll conclude that the way to get the Jews to come is only if we talk about the potential by scaring people. That's not going to work. We know the facts. I have my grandfather, who was one of the greatest supporters of the state of Israel, who has great-grandchildren who are not Jewish. And on the other hand, my uncle Menachem, who came on the Aliyah Rishonah, Tzvi Fishman knows my whole family story. He wrote a book a biography about my family. He came to Israel, Kibbutz Ein Dor, didn't live a frum life at all. Actually, on Pesach, my father chose to go visit him. And I remember my father sitting with him at a table, and he's dipping his biskvit in his tea. And on the way back, I tell my father, you know, you said that Uncle Menachem is like this big tzaddik, and I see him not only like eating chametz, but he's also like gebrachs. And my father said, and in Israel you have tzaddikim that eat chametz on Pesach. But yet this uncle from the Shomer Tzair, he doesn't have any great-grandchildren who are not Jewish. So we know that. But if there's one thing I could say from somebody that has experienced Aliyah before there was benefits, and despite of what people might think, my parents did it completely alone, and they did not have any financial support from my father's family or my mother's family. And my father graduated with smicha after 13 years of studying in Chavetz Chaim, and he could have had prominent position in any one of the branches of the Chavetz Chaim network, and I would have had a much better life because I had a really difficult and challenging upbringing here. And if you think that you will shove your Rav Kook opinions down people's throat, and if you think that or whatever you believe in, if you think that that's what's going to get people to make Aliyah, then you're simply wrong. And what will get people to make Aliyah is telling people what we could create here together. That's the Brit HaYehud, and also as I fought with in the Yechidat Maglan, in the war that I fought in my unit, with every single type of Jew, I could tell you that they all are saying the same thing. We have to start doing a birur. We have to start talking about who do we want to be as a nation? Who do we want to be, and what kind of country do we want to have here? And once we figure that out, then it will come. And I disagree with all of the people who mentioned here that there's going to be a Holocaust, that people are going to die, and about how here we could have guns. Bullshit, I have more guns in America than people have here. Okay, I have a whole arsenal of weapons in my brother's house. So that's not true either. And I have one of my best friends, Chaim Meislish, who's a grandson of the Saltner Rebbe. You could go ask him about the Jews in Brooklyn and the guns that they have. So we have to talk about what we could create here, and the Geula will come. The Geula is going to come b'ratzon. There's not going to be another Holocaust. So I think we should switch the narrative. We should start talking about what we could create here together, and how, despite the fact that the Israeli government does not want people to make Aliyah, they don't want more Jews making Aliyah, they want the Chok HaShvut, they want the Jews of the return who are not Jewish to come here because they want to dilute the population that will build here on Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. And with that being said, I believe in everything that Rav Kook says, and I say Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, a little cliche. So just in case you thought that I'm like some Satmar person, I'm not. What? With a bracha? With a bracha. Even when it's not a big deal. She was
I introduced sorry, you hear me? Chaya Waitkin from Tel Aviv. I had the privilege of working for somebody around 20 years ago for several years, and he put together this nice booklet. He was Machal, he made Aliyah in 1948, and a number of the people who wrote in this also made Aliyah around that time. Regarding the condition of why Jews don't make Aliyah from America, a small chapter, well, they're all, is written by Mayor Kaplan, and the best paragraph that can be described is this one. At the time, Israel was hard-pressed to finance the Aliyah of 1948 and 49, and to build up the new state structure, especially its military and security elements. Israel needed money and perhaps, hopefully, an improved relationship with the United States government. A deal was made in 1949 between David Ben-Gurion and Jacob Blaustein, who was the head of the Reform movement. which in essence stated that the American Jewish community would support Israel in every way on the condition that Israel would not imply that full support included in the obligation of Aliyah. I think we have it right there. I have a few of these copies on the table, and 2 years ago I sent all the pages to Tzvi Fishman, and you can read the entire article here. This meant that the law of return did not apply to American Jews. The law of return was an option, not an obligation. Thank you very much.
Good. You're right.
Okay, yes, sir.
It's a shame I didn't get to speak earlier. It's a shame that Yishai Fleischer is not here, and maybe a few people are here, but hopefully this can be turned into a clip. And if it won't, I'll turn it into a clip. Yishai and I are part of the same community, specifically former Soviet Jews. And I'll just tell you guys real quick, when I made Aliyah in 2010 originally, I set off what I like to call a nuclear weapon in my family. Because my parents took me out of the Soviet Union. And there's 1 million Russian-speaking Jews in America. Over 1 million. They're a peculiar group. They are very, very right-wing. They love Israel. They love Rabbi Kahana. But they eat, a lot of them eat pork. A lot of them don't really care about Judaism, Torah, holidays, etc. Maybe sometimes they go for something called Itzkor, for their dead relatives. Once in a blue moon they go for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, maybe Pesach, here and there. They're closer to Chabad. You're never going to find them in a reform or conservative shul unless you go to a certain place like Boston or San Francisco. Some of them vote, most of them vote for Trump. Some of them vote for not Trump. I came up to Josh an hour ago or 2 hours ago, and I asked him, I wanted to speak to the guy from Nefesh B'Nefesh and ask him, what do you guys do about Russian-speaking Jews from America? He goes to me, this issue is passed on to this organization called Nativ. Nativ used to be part of Mossad, and now it's, I guess, Lishkat HaKesher or something like that. And when I made Aliyah, I was dealing with them because anybody who comes from the former Soviet Union, they consider us kind of like a question mark, so they have to check. Even though my parents are well-known refuseniks from Lvov, but they still have to check who you are you Jewish or you're not? So I'm asking someone here in the audience or anybody watching, what are you going to do about 1 million Russian-speaking Jews in America? How do you get them to make Aliyah? Most of them are not religious. Most of them look at Israel as the poor place that their cousins or friends went to, the place they send money to, the place they watch on television, the place they support, the place they hope Donald Trump is going to save, as if it, at this point, matters who's going to be the president of America, as much as I'm a fan. So I'm asking a question. You know, I'm not tooting my own horn. I do what I can. I'm visiting here right now at the moment because, you know, my parents took me out of the former Soviet Union, and it's now my goal to take them out of America. So I kind of do what I can in the Northeast. I have friends that do what they can in Miami. I have other friends that do what they can wherever they are. I'm talking about maybe like people I can count on one hand, including myself. Some of you guys have backgrounds. You know, I meet American Jews, Ashkenazi American Jews, and I tell them I'm Russian. They're like, oh, I'm Russian too. You know, my grandfather and my great-grandfather. Guys, 1 million people, 1 million people. Maybe some of them are waking up. Maybe they're realizing that it's not smart anymore to send their kids to Ivy League schools. It's a dream for all of them. My mother also was pushing Ivy League schools, and now she wants her money back from NYU, for my sister. Again, open question. I'll leave you guys with that. 1 million people.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Jonathan, please.
Shalom. Yonatan Bahar from Har Bracha, originally from New York. Made Aliyah in 1984, at the age of 24, with about $500 in my pocket, I grew up in New York in a Zionist, militaristic youth organization called Beitar. Beitar was founded by Ze'ev Jabotinsky, who HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent to this world in order to proclaim to the Jews in Europe, liquidate the diaspora before the diaspora liquidates you. Sadly, the majority of Jews didn't listen to Jabotinsky. Today, the situation, unfortunately, seems to be turning in that direction also. I'm not sure if there's going to be a Holocaust. I'm not sure. Apocalypse. I don't know what everybody else was talking about. I don't know. I'm not a Navi. I'm not a prophet. I don't know. But what I do know is that the land of Israel is the greatest country in the entire world. It's the only country that a Jew can live as a Jew. The air that you breathe here, our wise and holy sages told us that the air of the land of Israel makes a person wise. They said, now this is good, this is mind-blowing. Our wise and holy sages said there are 613 commandments in the Torah. They said if you took 612 and put it on one side of the scale, and you took one commandment and put it on the other side of the scales would be even. Now we're talking about thou shalt not murder, thou not steal, adultery, idolatry, everything. What's that one commandment that's equal to all the others? Settling the land of Israel, Yeshuv Haaretz. It's mind-blowing if you think about it. And this is what I've dedicated my entire life to, trying my best to settle the land of Israel. I live in Har Bracha on the Shomron. As I'm sure you all know, you might have heard about this crazy idea of two-state solution. Anybody hear about that? You open up any newspaper, any TV, everybody's talking about it. It's all going to come down to that. If I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Yehuda also said, it's all going to come down to Yehuda and Shomron, to Judea and Samaria. We need more Jews to make Aliyah to Judea and Samaria. We have beautiful apartments in Har Bracha that are under construction. We have a beautiful Torah community, and anybody out there in the world who is listening to me and is looking to bring up his family in a Torah community based on chesed, on charity and loving kindness, and with tremendous people, Har Bracha is your place. Make Aliyah to Har Bracha.
Yay!
So if there's no one else, anyone else? Okay, I will conclude this this conference. We hope that this will be the last conference, the last Aliyah conference we're going to have, because we hope that the Jews will listen to this and take heed. And on that note, I'm going to blow the shofar, blow the horn, so everyone can hear around the world.
You have to stand up.
Don't forget to count Sphira. Thank you all for coming, and we hope that you're able to thank you to Tzvi Fishman. I forgot, and I'm gonna do it right now. I forgot to properly introduce Tzvi. Tzvi considers himself the world's greatest novelist, most notably for his Tevya and the Promised Land trilogy. He is also noted for his book, The Kuzari for Young Readers, and for the 4 commentators on the teachings of Rav Kook, which he wrote with Rabbi David Sampson, who spoke earlier, who will joined us. His fondest hobby is writing blogs and articles which highlight the vast difference between the Jewish life in diaspora and life here in the Holy Land. We encourage you to follow him as well on Facebook and on other social media. Likewise, we have Bring Them Home, which can be also at Israel Torah, on YouTube, on Facebook. I'm Josh Wander. Joshua Wander, you can also find me there. And please follow us. Please come. Follow us in 2 ways. Follow us on social media, and then follow us to the land of Israel, because this is where the Jewish people belong. Thank you.